Chapter 2553. The Wedding Scene 3. Yun Yanli stood his ground and had his arm tightly around Kuan Zui's waist. I do not care what happened over there. The wedding has to go on. All of a sudden, he raised his hand to release a display of fireworks in the sky. Everyone stay calm. Stay where you are and don't move. If you move a little, you will get yourself killed. The young palace master could be heard making the announcement. The governor has something to say. Her words were effective in keeping everyone still. Moreover, all the secret guards in different parts of the square were told to keep the scene orderly. The chaos subsided in a brief moment, and the crowd turned their attention to the jade statue again that was still engulfed in flames. Nothing seemed to have changed, however. The only noticeable difference was the increase in the number of guards equipped with shimmering armors that were fitted on their well-toned bodies. They stood in lines, surrounding both stages with the tightest security. No one could get close to the stage. Obviously, Yun Yanli had come prepared. Not even a minute had passed before the order was restored in the entire Zhengde Square. Yun Yanli, whose arm was still clinging onto Kuan Shui, swept his eyes across the people and said smilingly, "Do not panic. The residence was old and out of date. I have always wanted to destroy and rebuild it. Today is my wedding day, so I have to give my wife a new place to call home. Therefore it was I who called for the explosion. Old things have to go to make space for new beginnings." The crowd could only gaze at one another in astonishment. They never thought that the governor would blow up his own place. They still found it quite hard to believe that he would do so himself. You have blown up your own residence because of a wedding. What news, governor? Kuan Shui mocked him. Even though he managed to turn the situation around, Yun Yanli was not very pleased about it. He had prepared his troops, for he knew that the people from the Devil Kingdom would definitely take the chance to create a scene. The man believed that the security measures he had put in place were strong enough to hold off an attack from 1,000 devil troops. To his surprise, someone was still able to sneak in and blow up the place. Who could possibly be so powerful? How could he or she sneak into his residence without triggering any alarm? There were many things that he kept in his place. Among those things were the rare magical items that had collected over the years. He was sure that whoever had broken in would seize his prized possessions. Never had he thought he would lose all of the items at once. The loss pained him, but he tried to keep a straight face. The fireworks were actually a sign for his guards to go and take a look at the explosion site. He took another look at Gu Shijiao and thought that she would definitely be the one blowing up his place if she had not been here, next to him. Suddenly, he thought of another possible culprit. Is it Kuan Yunjian? Has the mudfish sneaked into my place? He could not think of anyone else, as the Kuan was the only one who was capable of causing the destruction. Kuan Shui squinted at him. How can a governor be so uninformed? He is a Kuan, not a mudfish. However, he is not the one who broke into the place. Who is it then? Try to guess. Yun Yanli smiled and said scornfully, I am not interested in making any guesses. I only want to carry on with the wedding. He threw a quick look to the north and added, right in front of him. If the jade statue were really Di Fui, he would not be pleased by what he was about to see. And that was exactly what Yun Yanli wanted. Kuan Shui looked at him casually and said, It is fine if you are not bothered by the loss of your house, but what about the star formation that is buried underneath it? Shouldn't you be worried that it will be exposed to the people? Chapter 2554. The Wedding Scene 4. Yun Yanli did not appreciate the comment, but still smiled at Kuan Shui and said, Silly girl, the star formation is buried deep in the ground. It cannot be destroyed or exposed so easily, even if the residence is gone. He was confident about his remark. The star formation in Legua City had been exposed because it was not hidden deep enough. However, the one in Luohua City was not the same. One would have to break through a series of array formations before reaching the core. It would certainly require a lot more explosives than what they had just witnessed. Although the explosion from before was quite massive, he assumed that only half a ton of explosives was used to cause the destruction. The amount was not enough to destroy the wall to the star formation. Furthermore, if the place were really destroyed, all the shatters and dust would tumble and bury the star formation even deeper. Hence, nothing would be revealed. Yun Yanli was fairly certain with himself until someone suddenly exclaimed, "Hey, what is that shiny thing?" Everyone turned and looked at the pointed direction. So did Yun Yanli. His heart sank as soon as he saw what it was. When the dust had settled, bright flashes of light could be seen, which looked like countless twinkling stars. It is the star formation. That really is the star formation. Some people from Lugwa City were able to recognize the pattern. Yes, it is the star formation. It seems to be consistently buried under the governor's residence. Let us have a look. The crowd began to move as they were obviously more interested in the star formation than the governor's wedding. They could not care less about the guards and immediately headed towards the governor's residence. There were more than tens of thousands of spectators, but only 3,000 guards. There was nothing these guards could do. The wedding scene was about to get out of control. Yun Yanli started to panic. He heaved a loud sigh and signaled his men. The young palace master immediately released another display of fireworks in the sky to summon 4 other troops that came out from nowhere. Immediately, these troops had completely surrounded the square. All the exits had been blocked. The people were stopped by these black shadows and pushed back into the square. These 4 troops had a total of at least 10,000 soldiers. All of them were dressed entirely in black. Even their faces were covered in black, so no one knew how they actually looked like. However, their presence was intimidating enough. These men had surrounded the square securely like a metal wall, so that no one could get past them. The men were complete strangers to the citizens of Luohua City. They had never encountered the dark troops, so they looked at one another confusedly, unsure of what Yun Yanli was about to do to them. "Governor Yin, what are you trying to do?" "Governor Yin, we are good citizens." All sorts of emotions started to surface in the crowd. Some were confused. Some were offended. Others were still in shock. Some brave ones called out and questioned his authority. Yun Yanli raised his hand and said, "Arrest them." These violent men in black rushed into the crowd and arrested those who made the most noise. The ones who were seized were securely tied and placed next to the stage. Yun Yanli's relentless arrest managed to scare off the rest of the people. Although they did not agree with his ways, no one dared to say another word to challenge him anymore. Yun Yanli looked at them icily and said, "These are only some tricks played by the people of the Devil Kingdom to get you confused. You need not care about what happened at the residence. When the ceremony is over, I shall take care of the Devil King's jade statue. By then, all these tricks will no longer happen. Time is ticking. Let us carry on with the ceremony now." Chapter 2555. The wedding crisis. Yun Yanli's men were already heading towards his residence to solve the mess. The star formation would be buried once again, and kept away from the eyes of the general public. He signaled the master of ceremony to make the announcement. "Now is a perfect time for the bride and groom to take the next step. Please come forward and take your vows." Yun Yanli forcibly turned Kun Shui around, so that they would face each other. The master of the ceremony continued speaking to keep the ceremony going quickly and smoothly. "First, bow to the creator of the universe. Second, bow to the master of heaven and earth. Third, bow to man and wife." The ceremony is now complete. The first announcement was confusing to the audience. Should the first bow be dedicated to heaven and earth? Who is the creator of the universe? The second bow was changed too. Instead of dedicating the bow to their parents, it was dedicated to the creator of heaven and earth. Both the creator of the universe and the master of heaven and earth sounded mighty. No one had heard about either of the names before. Kun Shui was surprised too, but Yun Yanli did not give him much time to think. He was forced to carry on with the ceremony. In the blink of an eye, the entire ceremony was done. It felt rather odd to everyone. As soon as the master of ceremony announced the completion of the ceremony, tremendous flashes of lightning suddenly filled the sky. The audience looked up and was shocked by the sudden change of weather. Rolls of dark, ominous clouds replaced the sunny, bright sky. It was an uncomfortable change. Was God against the newlyweds? Many questions surfaced, but none were answered. Kun Shui was quite sad as he had never thought that he would be married to Yun Yanli someday. It was the result of a series of unforeseen mistakes. Was God going to punish him for the mistake? Nonetheless, Feng Ruhua was delighted by Kuan Zui's misfortune. She barely had the chance to tease him with such an embarrassing topic, so she felt the need to enjoy the moment. On the other hand, Yin Yanli was really one of a kind. Under such intense circumstances, he still insisted on carrying out the ceremony. He must be really obsessed with the woman. Feng Ruhua and the rest of her alliance had certainly not expected that. Their initial plan was to let Gu Shizhou destroy the governor's residence and uncover the hidden star formation. They thought that Yin Yanli would put the star formation as his priority and delay the wedding. They predicted that he would rush to conceal the star formation to reassure the people that everything was fine. Meanwhile, they would take the opportunity to recover the statue. Initially, Feng Ruhua wanted to send a large troop into the city as a distraction, but was stopped by Gu Shizhou. Gu Shizhou made it clear that Yin Yanli had put on a show to attract the people of the Devil Kingdom. If the troops really made their way into the city, it could easily be a one-way ticket for them, as Yin Yanli would definitely seize them all. Therefore, they only sent 15 elites from the Devil Kingdom, each with extraordinary strength and abilities. These men were scattered among the crowd and patiently waited for the signal. When the tension slowly increased, they did not chime in too loudly. They only tried to trigger the people, especially the loud ones. Yin Yanli assumed that the people from the Devil Kingdom were going to create a state of confusion and disorder in Zhengde Square, so he had arranged to have many of his men amongst the audience. To his dismay, none of these devil troops showed up even at the end of the ceremony. Instead, he had arrested many innocent people. Although some people from the audience were temporarily seized, they did not surrender. Curiously, they kept looking back at the governor's residence, which was now adorned with many glistening starlights. The more he resisted the public, the more suspicious they grew of him. Perhaps what the jade statue once said was true. Hence, many of them looked at the statue in anticipation. Their hearts sank as the flames continued to burn it. The flames from the 8 bronze pots were burning brighter and brighter. The 5-colored stone that was used to build the stage was lighted up as well. It seemed to be emphasizing the color red, which suggested that it was burning hot. Chapter 2556. The Wedding Crisis 2. The stage had basically turned itself into a barbecue rack as the flames thoroughly burnt the statue. As it was no longer safe, the young palace master and her men quickly retreated. They had only stood around the stage before to keep people away from stealing the jade statue. Anxiously, Feng Ruhua kept her eyes on the jade statue with clenched fists. Was Gu Shizhou going to teleport to the stage and rescue the statue? If everything went as planned, she should be on the stage by now to seize the statue since the place was in chaos. Gu Shizhou had the invisibility spell with her, so no one could see her even if she stood on the stage. Due to that, Feng Ruhua could not even tell if she was already there because she would be invisible. Did she hurt herself when she blew up Yin Yanli's residence? The security should not have been very tight, right? Feng Ruhua had contacted Gu Shizhou earlier and was reassured that she was safe. She even said that she had already entered the star formation and was getting ready to plant the explosive. As soon as the place was destroyed, she promised to rejoin the rescue mission at Zhengde Square. It would not take long for her to remove the statue from the pillar. However, a few moments had passed, and Kuan Shui and Yin Yanli had even been married in the process. Yet Gu Shizhou was still nowhere to be seen. Furthermore, the statue was still well secured on the stage. The flames were drawing closer to the center, and soon, the wooden pillar was up in flames. The pillar used to be burgundy in color. However, it soon turned lighter and lighter. After the ceremony had concluded, Yin Yanli did not guide his bride into their bridal chamber. Instead, he grasped her by the waist and stood by the railing. They watched as the fire blazed merrily. Utterly delighted, Yin Yanli asked in a cheerful tone, "Shizhou, do you know the nature of this fire?" Kuan Shui answered firmly, "I do not. It is known as the fire of Funfanya. Everything will be indiscriminately destroyed under the blaze. Even one soul has no chance to escape from the fire. This is even more powerful than the fire of Honglianya. Can you see the pillar in the middle? It is made of dark Bodhi wood, which is specialized in trapping one's soul. Anyone who is tied at the pillar will be burnt into ashes, along with their souls. I do not know if the jade statue is actually Di Fui or not, but it does not matter. There is only one possible ending, which is that the statue will turn into a pile of ash. Kuan Shui gasped in utter surprise. There was no time to waste. They could not watch as their master slowly died in the blaze. Someone had to retrieve the statue by force. He gave his finger a twitch to signal someone on the ground. Soon a voice broke out from the tent. Yin Yanli has sacrificed millions of innocent souls to support the star formations. The formations are not intended to help the people. Instead, it is used to absorb the essence of heaven and earth. The purest source of spiritual power will then be used to cleanse the resentment and grudge of the dead, so he can utilize the power to carry out nefarious activities for his own benefit. The star formation is the birthplace of the bloodbats. Yin Yanli is the evil that we should all be aware of, the one who puts his people's lives at stake. The jade statue is truly the celestial being who is here to save us all. The person who made the announcement was one of Tian Xiuxia's puppets. No man was needed, so people could not tell where the voice was coming from. Chapter 2557. The Wedding Crisis 3. Yin Yanli's men were good at tracking people and even sounds, but none of them could believe that someone actually had the guts to make such a treacherous and disrespectful remark. They failed to stop the announcement in time because as soon as they found the puppet, it had already conveyed the information. Everyone in the square had clearly heard it, and their blood boiled with indignation. Some could no longer be bothered about the soldiers and decided to march forward. Governor Yin, what do you have to say about this? What else can he say? He will surely deny it. He must be guilty. That is why he had to stop us from entering his residence. I do not care. I must get the celestial jade statue away from the fire. Put out the fire. Put it out. The disturbance soared. The crowd quickly became unruly as tension continued to build. The words had utterly stirred people's dissatisfaction with Yin Yanli. Many figures flashed by in the air, attempting to save the jade statue. Some rushed towards the stage where Yin Yanli stood, and demanded a proper explanation while trying to stop him from harming the statue. Others were trying to resist the guards. The place was about to lose control. Suddenly, a man ran toward the crowd. It was one of Yin Yanli's men who had to make an urgent report. Governor, this is bad. The city gate has been breached. Many wild beasts have come into the city. The ground began to tremor as if 10,000 horses were galloping toward the square. Obviously, the beasts had come in a massive pack. From what they could observe, these animals were charging towards the square. Many of the citizens naturally started to run. It was utter chaos. But where was Gu Shijiu anyway? She was actually standing among the crowd, at a place where she could easily see the entire situation. However, she was not alone. Someone had taken control of her. Clearly, she could see everything that was happening. It all went well at first. Gu Shijiu managed to destroy Yin Yanli's residence to expose the star formation that he had been hiding underground. But before she could make it to Zhengde Square, a man suddenly appeared and got in her way. The man was wearing robes of emerald bamboo embroideries. A piece of cloth had concealed the left side of his handsome face, revealing only his eye. With a smile, he raised his arm and secured Gu Shijiu at the shoulder. Master Shijiu, where do you think you are going? The man was none other than Zhu Duqing, her new apprentice. He was holding onto her shoulder very tightly, so inundating that she could feel her legs go weak. She tried to stand back and keep a distance from him, but he grasped her at the waist too and pulled her into his arms. Astonished, Gu Zijia's heart sank at the sudden realization. Zhu Duqing's kung fu was not like before. His strength had increased tremendously. His spiritual level was at least a mighty immortal. By revealing his actual strength, it was clear that he did not intend to play his pretentious self any longer. Gu Shijiu was trying to play dumb. Zhu Duqing, what are you doing? It is great to see that you have escaped. I have been trying to save you. However, with a tight smile, he heaved a helpless sigh. Shijiu, why do you have to pretend? You no longer trust me, right? Why would you save me? No matter how bad my situation is, you will never help me out. Why shouldn't I trust you? I do not understand. It must be a misunderstanding. But this is not the right time to discuss it. I need to do something urgently. We will talk about this later. Gu Shijiu did not want him to lose control, so she tried to talk him out of it while attempting to escape. Chapter 2558. The Wedding Crisis 4. Zhu Duqing sighed softly. Are you thinking of rescuing Difui? Fine, I'll help you. After hearing that, Gu Shijiu seemed to have blacked out momentarily. When she regained consciousness, she found herself inside a tent at the crowded Jingde Square. She tried to speak but found that her voice was as soft as the sound of insects. This was in stark contrast to the extremely noisy surrounding. Zhu Duqing had sealed her acupoint, and also disguised both of them. They now looked like an ordinary couple. Later, they headed out, and Gu Shijiu managed to see everything that happened on the two towers. She saw that Yin Yanli and Kuan Shui had completed their wedding rituals. She also saw the jade statue burning fiercely on the other side of the square. Shijiu, is that Kuan Shui who was just married to Yin Yanli? I cannot believe that he does not even know it is not you. I thought he loved you so badly. Apparently he is dumb. Shijiu, do you know the nature of the fire? It is the fire of Funfanya. Zhu Duqing explained the power of the flame and concluded with a soft tone. I am the one who taught Yin Yanli this spell. I gave him the blood he needed, the 5 colored stones, and even the necessary wood. Sigh, I have put in so much effort to make his dream come true. Disappointedly, he trapped me in a prison and wanted to kill me. Zhu Duqing, why are you doing all this? Hopelessly, Gu Shijiu asked as she gritted her teeth. For him. Zhu Duqing pointed at the jade statue on the tower. He then sighed. Today is the day. What has happened between the two of you? You would not know the enmity between us. You do not have to know. You just need to know that only one of us can survive. Are you a member of the Yin family? That was the only clue Gu Shijiu had. The Yin family is nothing. I have nothing to do with them. Zhu Duqing drew closer to Gu Shijiu. He was so close that his lips almost touched her ear. They are too low a class of people even to polish my shoes. Gu Shijiu finally understood that Zhu Duqing was the main culprit behind the chaos in the Shuro world. He finally revealed himself. Unfortunately, it was in such an intricate situation. Gu Shijiu could only watch helplessly as the flames engulfed the jade statue. She had no way to escape. Nonetheless, she did notice that Kuan Shui had signaled his peers to take action. The beacon was lighted as a sign for the soldiers outside the city wall to send in the ferocious beasts. Besides that, she also heard Tian Xiuxiu use the puppets to urge the crowds to foil Yin Yanli's plan. The place was undoubtedly in a state of chaos. Zhu Duqing sighed as he shook his head. They are all dumb *Cs. It is impossible to put out the fire. It will burn everything into ashes. They are merely killing themselves. TSK. What a tragedy. Gu Shijiu was generally a calm person. However, she was lost now. Her eyes started to turn red. She had no idea what she could do, and it seemed that she could not save him. In fact, she had even gotten his loyal subordinates into trouble. In a last attempt to save her friends, she struggled out of Zhu Duqing's embrace and shouted with all of her energy. No! Stop! Please stop! Please! Come back! Stop running! It's a trap! Come back, please! Her voice was extremely soft. Even though she had consumed every bit of her energy, no one heard her. The only thing she could do was to watch them run into the burning flame. Crack! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck the burning tower. The thunder was loud enough to impair everyone's ears. Meanwhile, the people had rushed into the burning tower has been pushed back by a powerful force that felt as though they had crashed into a wizardry barrier. Everyone was shocked. What was happening? Look! Someone shouted as he pointed at the sky. The crowd quickly lifted their heads and immediately took a deep breath. Gosh! What was that? No one had realized that plenty of light purple clouds had completely covered the sky. It seemed that a terrifying storm was approaching. Those with low spiritual power were trembling, and some even slumped to the ground. It was a catastrophe. Someone in the crowd would be experiencing a catastrophe. However, the strange thing was that the ominous clouds were usually red or black. No one has seen purple ones. These clouds seemed to glow in 7 colors. Certainly, none of the people here had seen it before. Those who had were wondering who the challenge was for. The jade. It is a holy statue, someone shouted. Gosh. It is a holy statue. It is going through the catastrophe. Swiftly, another bolt of lightning struck the tower, and the burning platform collapsed. Then, a white shadow was engulfed by the lightning and slowly rose up to the sky. The crowd watched in awe as the jade statue began to float in midair as it glowed. At the same time, numerous bolts of lightning struck the jade statue. Everyone watched silently as the statue glowed in 7 colors. Gu Shijie also held her breath as she fixed her eyes on the jade statue and watched it experience 49 strikes of lightning. All of a sudden, the jade statue slowly opened its eyes and got up. The jade statue was alive. It seemed to have turned into a man with a white robe right in front of 1,000 pairs of eyes. The silky, snowy white robe with embroidery designs was fluttering in the clouds. Meanwhile, the man's hair was like a waterfall flowing at his back. Everyone was amazed as he stood on a cloud with 7 colored glows. He looked to the ground as though he was a holy lord. Furthermore, his strong aura made the people around him kneel to worship him. Even Yunyanli's soldiers had kneeled. Gu Shijie almost stopped breathing because of what she had seen. She was certain that the man was Deity. However, his aura was so much stronger than she remembered. Suddenly, she felt a crack in her head as a plethora of memories rushed into her mind. Chapter 2559. Surprisingly, he had become a great deity. Please excuse me, my celestial brother. With your beautiful appearance, you will look just as charming even if you are naked. I need to borrow all of your clothes from you. Please consider this as an act of kindness for a random stranger. The marriage has been arranged between your mother and I. No one else should know about it. Are you happy to have me as your fiancé? You once said that rings were necessary as a sign of love between a man and a woman. When the woman agreed to be with the man, she would accept his ring. This ring is a perfect fit, made especially for you. You have not taken it off, which means you have agreed to marry me, haven't you? I do care, Celestial Master Zwa. I only want to be with you until the end of time. Just the two of us against the world. These images flashed by like movie scenes in her mind, overwhelming her with the acute nostalgia of their sweet past. They had been through the test of time. There were times of argument, of affection, of pain, and last but not least, of everlasting love. But everything was erased from her memory. Nonetheless, the pain of losing him had never been forgotten. She still remembered going through the distraught of trying not to forget him. She had even carved their vows everywhere as an everlasting reminder of how much she loved him. The name that he had always been using was Deity. Huang Tu was the name he used after becoming the Lord. He had used many identities: Deity, Celestial Master Zwa, Huang Tu, the Lord, and most recently Shen Nianma. All these names belonged to the same man. It had always been him. Through a series of flashbacks, she became more and more overwhelmed with a mixture of feelings. She stood gazing at him blankly as he levitated in the air. Should she rejoice in his rebirth? Did her loss in the past greatly sadden her? She was too emotional to tell how she actually felt. She looked at him fixedly without even blinking, as she was afraid that he might disappear again in just a blink of an eye. She wanted to take another step closer to him, but was stopped by Zhu Duqing. He needed to make sure that she stayed by his side. The corners of his mouth turned up, seemingly smiling but contemptuously. The man had never expected Deity to make it through the barriers and wake up just in time. After the catastrophe, he had managed to reach a higher level. Surprisingly, he had become a great deity. The man had bypassed becoming a mighty immortal and went from being a golden immortal to a great deity. How did he do that? To be safe, Zhu Duqing quietly retreated with Gu Shijie. Using the facial disguise technique, they looked no different than ordinary people. The way he seized Gu Shijie in his arms was rather unique. Gu Shijie did not look like she had been abducted. Instead, she looked like she had willingly submitted herself to her husband. People would immediately assume that they were just a loving couple from the way they embraced one another. Nothing looked suspicious. Gu Shijie started to panic. She certainly did not want to leave. They had yet to be united even though she had been anxiously taking care of his jade statue for so long. And now that he was finally awake, she was forced to leave. She had no other choice. Her strength was obviously not a match for Zhu Duqing. Also, the man knew her kung fu moves by heart. With barely any strength left, she could not run even if she wanted to. She wobbled with uncertainty during the first few steps as she slowly moved farther and farther away from the man she loved. Out of every person in the square, Yin Yanli was the most surprised one. He never thought that his careful plan would fail. On quite the contrary, he had even contributed to the man's powerful return. All of his efforts were in vain. He was disappointed by the outcome but was not entirely despaired. Chapter 2560. I meant my words. Literally, as a matter of fact, Yin Yanli thought that he was already married to Gu Shijiu. Since they had exchanged their vows during the official ceremony, she was now considered his legal wife. Therefore, her past with Di Fui did not matter anymore. So what if Di Fui had come back? It was all too late. Moreover, Yin Yanli was undoubtedly powerful. With the help of his loyal troops, he could easily outnumber the few soldiers that Di Fui had at his disposal. He was certainly not afraid. Yin Yanli had waited for ages to destroy Di Fui. Hence, he looked forward to a fight. Tightly, he held Kuan Zui's hand tightly and looked confidently at the glorious, radiant man in the sky. Di Fui looked down and their eyes met. Yin Yanli was overwhelmed by a sense of tremendous pressure as soon as he caught the icy look in Di Fui's eyes. Di Fui's assertion of authority was, without a doubt, intimidating. Yin Yanli was obviously frightened, for the man's aura was much too strong. However, Yin Yanli did not surrender to his fear. He openly challenged Di Fui and said, "Di Fui, I did not think that the jade statue was really you. Did you come back just in time to be part of our wedding ceremony? Are you here to join the celebrations?" He said it deliberately to provoke Di Fui. The audience remained quiet. Many of them knew about the relationship between Di Fui and Gu Shijiu. Some were aware of their love story. They assumed that the Devil King would be offended by the aggressive hue and proceed to take the bride away. Kuan Shui was lost in awe at Di Fui's powerful comeback when Yin Yanli suddenly made the sarcastic remarks. This suddenly reminded him that he was still disguised as Gu Shijiu. He wanted to change his appearance but decided to be patient. Fixedly, he looked at Di Fui in bewilderment and started wondering when the man would come and save him. Di Fui studied Kuan Shui and remained expressionless. "Does your marriage have anything to do with me?" he casually asked. His voice was loud and clear, reverberating around the hills. The reply, however, had come as a shock to everyone, including Kuan Shui. He blinked his eyes at the man in disbelief, trying to make sense of the situation and check if his master had lost all of his memory. Even Zhu Duqing was shocked. He stopped to look up at the man in the air and smiled at the ludicrous response. It would be fun, he thought, if Di Fui had lost all of his memory. He then looked at Gu Shijiu, who was standing by his side. He could not read her expression under the disguise, but surely, she must be looking pale as a sheet. "What did you mean?" Yin Yanli certainly felt bitter as he had wanted to rub this fact into Di Fui's face. "I meant my words literally," Di Fui responded nonchalantly. "Don't you care about her anymore? Didn't you think that you were going to marry her someday?" Yin Yanli pulled Kuan Shui even closer to him as if boasting his authority over his newly wedded wife. His reply had an aggressive tone attached to it, but Di Fui was not bothered at all. "Congratulations. I have never thought so." Yin Yanli was shocked. It would seem that Di Fui had indeed lost all of his memory. He did not seem to care about Gu Shijiu anymore. Yin Yanli laughed out loud at the reply he received. "Good to know." He then planted a soft kiss on Kuan Zui's supple cheek. Kuan Shui was utterly surprised by the kiss. It would appear that the man would always take advantage of the opportunities he had. Chapter 2561. I was your sweetheart. Just then Kuan Shui was looking at Di Fui, hoping that he would get him out of this mess. The sudden kiss had got to him, but he was unsure of what to do. All of a sudden, Di Fui suddenly turned away. He looked to the north and seemed to throw his sleeves in that direction. The sleeves traveled at lightning speed, and in the blink of an eye, They had found and secured a person amongst the crowd. Everything happened so quickly that no one knew what was going on. Before everyone got a grasp of the situation, everything had already settled down for Difui. There was a person who appeared by his side. As soon as the crowd saw the person's face, they all gasped in astonishment at the rare sight. She was a middle-aged woman with absolutely nothing special about her appearance. She was wearing the most ordinary set of clothes, and would be easily overlooked in a crowd. The spectacular man in white, however, was hugging the woman so tightly as if he had just found the most precious item on earth. Had Difui gone mad? He left his beloved woman alone in the arms of another man, and embraced what looked to be another man's wife instead. "Let go of my wife!" A man could be seen rushing out from the crowd, bursting with anger. Difui did not pay any attention to him. His eyes were solely locked on the face of the woman in his arms. Gently he caressed her face and said softly, "Baby, you have lost some weight." The comment got the crowd going crazy. Kuan Shui was shocked, and so was Yin Yanli. Speechless, Zhu Duqing stood unmoving. Tears could be seen rolling in the woman's eyes, but she resisted the urge to cry and returned his gaze with a smile. "You are finally here. Do you know how long I have been waiting for you?" Overwhelmed, she tried to hold back the tears. "I am sorry." Difui apologized while planting a soft kiss on her forehead. "For all those years that you have spent, waiting for my return." The woman was caught off guard by his response. She stared at him in utter disbelief. You have," she said with a quavering voice. He seemed to have brought up the years that she had spent waiting for him. Did he remember everything? Could this really be? The surprise had come too soon. She could not believe that it was finally happening. With a smile, he heaved a sigh out of nostalgic sentiment. "Baby, how are Mu Feng, Mu Yun, and the rest of them doing?" Gu Shijiu had no doubts now that Difui remembered everything. He finally recalled his past as Huang Tuesday. "They are doing fine. Just like me, they have all forgotten about you." She spoke with involuntary pauses. Her tearful eyes kindled with excitement. "It does not matter. When everything here is done, I will visit them in the lower bound, with you, and make sure that they remember me. They have always been my loyal companions, after all. When I was immortalized, they were completely heartbroken. If they really cannot recall anything about me, I will be sure to leave them with an unforgettable impression next time. All right. We will do as you say." At this point, everyone could already tell that something was not quite right. Intuitively, they turned to Yin Yanli for an answer. Yin Yanli was shocked too. He looked at the couple that was levitating in the air. The two lovebirds were obviously indulging in their sweet, private moment. Then he turned to the timid, lovable woman by his side and gritted his teeth. "Who are you?" Kuan Shui was overwhelmed with amusement. He blinked at him and said, "Try to guess." Yin Yanli's face turned white instantly. With a push he called him out. "Kuan Yunjian. Get away from me." Kuan Shui staggered to his feet, swaying a little before deliberately trampling on Yin Yanli's foot. "You are such a bad boy. I was your sweetheart just then. You have even made me marry you. How can you just turn around and push me away?" Chapter 2562. Untitled. Yin Yanli's expression portrayed a bitter resentment toward Kuan Shui. Moreover, he could not understand how Gu Shijiu had got away when everything was so well secured. How did the beautiful woman turn into this hideous creature? His wizardry barrier had been working just fine, and he had never stopped checking the surveillance all this while. When and how did the switch happen? He was absolutely dumbfounded by the fact that he had been married to a man. Yin Yanli was all choked up in utter disbelief. He could not help but slap the man. "Disgusting ladyboy. Go to hell." Kuan Shui was prepared for it. He let the impact guide him away from the man, and even waved flirtatiously in the air, before making a perfect landing on the ground. First thing first, he adjusted his robes before looking at Yin Yanli with disappointment. "Although I do not like you as much as you like me, we are married, so I might as well consider you as my partner now. How can you rush into murdering your own man? God will punish you for the sin." He was delighted, very delighted. He had disguised as Gu Shijiu for far too long. It was certainly a difficult journey for him. Finally, he was able to be himself again. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli could not believe that Gu Shizhou could still trick him while being trapped in the Golden House. He certainly had not anticipated her escape. He had always thought that her acupuncture points were sealed, so he never checked. He did not realize that Kun Shui also had the ability to change the positions of his acupuncture points, which made all of his spells redundant. Kun Shui had actually never lost his kung fu. He had always been acting so that his mission could be accomplished. The real Gu Shizhou had finally shown up, along with his master. Everything turned out to be incredibly perfect. Kun Shui no longer wanted to endure the embarrassment. As soon as everything was exposed, he quickly returned to his handsome, stylish self. He immediately rejoined the group with Feng Ruhua, knowing very well that he would be no match to Yun Yanli if they were to fight on the stage. Infuriated, Yun Yanli wanted to kill him so badly. He would not let the man flee so easily. He reached out his hand and cast a streak of blinding red light that was aimed directly at Kun Zui's neck. The streak of light was as sharp as a blade, whistling through the air with tremendous strength and speed. Without a doubt, a single hit would immediately cost one's life. The strength was capable of splitting through even the strongest form of metal armor. It was coming at Kun Shui, forcefully and rapidly. Even his exceptional agility would not be able to save him this time. He panicked and assumed that he would definitely get hit. Then things got a twist when an arm reached out and caught the streak of red light. The light could be seen struggling in the mysterious hand, but could not break free. Kun Shui immediately leaped back to avoid getting hit. "Master!" he called out loud. The one who had controlled the red light was Di Fui. He had one hand on Gu Zijia's waist and held the light with his other hand. Bewildered, Yun Yanli never thought that Di Fui had the ability to stop the blade with his bare hand. Not even the great deities from the upper bound could do the same. Moreover, Di Fui's kung fu had just recovered. How could he be so at ease with the deadly blade? He was holding the streak of red light so casually as if it was nothing alarming. How much kung fu had this man recovered? "Yun Yanli, you should be fighting me," Di Fui casually said with a smile. Gracefully, he behaved like the perfect gentleman. However, his aura was not to be underestimated. Yun Yanli took a step back but was still determined to argue. "Di Fui, stay where you are. If you dare, fight me like a real man this time." Chapter 2563. The battle. Yun Yanli's kung fu was at the level of a great deity. In order to test out his strength, he once snuck into heaven and challenged the great deities anonymously. He had faced all of them, except Shinjioli Ning Sueno, and the current emperor immortal. The result was satisfactory to him as he had defeated all of the ones he challenged. No one was able to beat him, not even the lords who had ascended from the earth. Back then, he was worried that his cover might be blown, so every ambush was a quick one. He attacked, he fought, he won, and he left. As for those great deities who had unfortunately been defeated, they were too embarrassed to admit defeat, and decided not to mention a word about the incident. Therefore, Yun Yanli was never quite fully satisfied with his victories, as no one knew who the mysterious man actually was. For the first time, he finally had the ability to show his true power in front of his people and his beloved woman. If he could beat Di Fui, the audience around him would certainly recognize his victory. Yun Yanli knew nothing about Di Fui's past on Earth. He would not care even if he did. How powerful could a lord from the earth possibly be? He had defeated quite a number of lords before. Moreover, Di Fui had just been through the catastrophe and advanced to the level of a great deity. Yun Yanli also assumed that a child like Di Fui would not have the strength to fight him, even if his spiritual power had increased. It was the perfect chance for him to defeat Di Fui if he were ever to do it. He looked at Di Fui fixedly and scornfully said, "I challenge you to a fight. No one is allowed to leave until someone is victorious. Anyone who runs will be forever labeled as a coward." He was not too worried about settling Di Fui. In fact, he was more concerned that Gu Shizhou would teleport and save him at a critical time. Therefore, he wanted to make his point absolutely clear. Frowningly, she stared at Di Fui. She was never worried about his strength. What she was worried about was his health. After all, he had just survived a catastrophe, so he was probably still weak. It would be a disadvantage for him to fight at this very moment. However, before she even voiced out her concern, Di Fui was already reassuring her. Baby, what do you want me to do with him? Should I kill him right away or make him crippled? Surprised, Gu Shijie looked at him with admiration. Their eyes met, and with one look, Gu Shijie could immediately tell that he aimed to win the fight. She was slightly relieved. Celestial Master Zhua, do as you wish. I have no preference, she said with a sweet smile. She called him by his name in the past, and Di Fui liked it very much. He proceeded to kiss her forehead. All right. Stay here. I shall make him pay for what he did to you. He then gave her a packet of dried fruits as a snack. These fruits taste quite nice. You will like it. Try. Snack a little while you watch the fight. Great. Gu Shijie took the packet of dried fruits and stood back. Di Fui flicked his sleeves, as a sign of him getting ready to fight. He threw a stern look at Yun Yanli and said, Yun Yanli, your father had misused his authority, which ended up in him being defeated. However, his children should never be burdened by his sin. If you chose to cultivate in a proper way, you would always have been welcome into heaven. You should never have used this selfish and evil way of cultivation, which sacrificed millions of lives for the sake of your success. I am taking this matter into my own hands and will restore the peace here. He did not speak loudly, but everyone in the square had heard him. The people were astonished. They had only recently suspected that the disasters in the Shura world must have something to do with the star formation. Chapter 2564. The battle too. Before Di Fui continued, Kun Shui quickly added, the star formation is clearly the root cause behind all the chaos in the Shura world. The bloodbaths, the rain of blood, as well as the madness experienced by the creatures in the wild, were caused by the star formation. Our master has thoroughly investigated the star formation in Lugua City, and you can obviously see the result after it was reconfigured. The one in this city has just been exposed. You will understand when you see it. The audience stood frozen as they tried to connect the dots. Yun Yanli had been behaving rather oddly today, so they were quite convinced by what Kun Shui had just said. Many were very interested in having a look at the star formation. After all, their fates were closely tied to this magical mechanism. Obviously, they were also interested in the battle that was about to unfold between the two great fighters in front of them. The chance of witnessing a great battle was hard to come by. Since the star formation had already been revealed, the crowd guessed that they would get the opportunity to see it later. Therefore, the epic battle should be their priority at the moment. So, everyone decided to stay still until it began. The young palace master suddenly interrupted contemptuously. The star formation used to work just fine. My master had spent a great amount of effort and time to keep it going, so that his people can have a peaceful time here. However, these people from the Devil Kingdom have completely twisted his good intention to jeopardize his reputation. The star formation in Lugua City has been manipulated. No one knows if the one we have here has been manipulated as well. Perhaps they have summoned the dead to fill the formation with malice and resentment in order to create a wicked effect. The young palace master expressed her point of view, articulately. Everything that she said was false, but she made it sound believable. Some of the people in the crowd were convinced. In fact, if Yun Yanli had not stopped them from going to see the star formation earlier, they would have totally believed what the young palace master had just said. Nonetheless, things were different now. Who do you believe in? Di Fui asked with a smile, while looking at the crowd for an answer. The people answered in unison. We believe in you. Embarrassed, Yun Yanli stood there quietly. On the other hand, the young palace master was annoyed. What a bunch of fools. Unbelievable. Some people could no longer suppress their anger and started protesting. If you are not guilty, why did you stop us from going to the other cities to check their star formation? After what happened in Lugua City, the only thing you tried to do was to conceal the news. You even arrested so many talented people who only wanted to find out the truth behind the formations, and killed them by convicting them of treason. How many of them have you killed? I am sure you know the number. You tried to keep the truth away from us, but the more you tried, the more obvious it became. We had become suspicious of you a long time ago. Do you really think that we are fools? When one man rose in opposition, others felt brave enough to follow suit. All of them had enough of the mess. Finally, they had the chance to voice out how they felt. Being an arrogant person, the young palace master could not deal with it when someone challenged her authority. Impulsively, she wanted to whip the first man who challenged them. She withdrew her whip and used almost all of her spiritual power to launch an attack at him. Obviously, she wanted him dead. However, before she could reach the man, a sword swung by and knocked her whip away. Gu Qing, have you decided to join the rebels? The young palace master was furious. The one who stopped her was one of her closest followers. He was also a man who was born and raised in the Shura world. The people of the Shura world deserve to know the truth, Gu Qing said with his teeth gritted. Chapter 2565. The Battle 3. That is right. We want the truth. We do not want our people to be used and exploited. True. We only showed our loyalty to the governor because we thought he was the savior of the Shura world. However, it seems he does not really want to help us. The people you have asked us to kill are not the people from the Devil Kingdom. Instead, they are ours. Some braves ones chimed in. All of them had been through a lot. Soon, more than half of Yin Yanli's troops had been divided. More and more became dissatisfied and slowly joined the resistance. Many of them were the elites from some of the local clans in the Shura world. The catastrophic events in the Shura world had caused many of them to lose their loved ones. Some had even watched as their entire family or clan died before their eyes. They really wanted to know the truth behind all the chaos. The truth was clear enough for everyone to see. Those who accepted it would no longer follow Yin Yanli. No matter how persuasive the young palace master was, the situation was now beyond repair. These men were supposed to be in the front line to take down Feng Ruhua and her men. Instead, they had switched sides at this critical moment. Yin Yanli's face was as pale as a sheet. He had worked so hard to build his reputation here over many years. Now everything took a swift turn, and all of his efforts were in vain. He certainly had not expected Di Fui to be the one to foil his plans. Nonetheless, he knew that all the trust that the people had for him was gone in an instant. He was furious, but he was still adamant about taking down Di Fui and his men. After all, the Shura world was only a piece of land for him to cultivate. He did not intend to rule the place. Moreover, he was almost done with his practice so he could leave any time he wanted. He still had faith in the soldiers in black that came to his aid at the last minute. Those were the ones that would be helpful to him at this moment. He was confident that they would never betray him under any circumstance. He had trained the soldiers using a special method that he learned from the prophecies. No matter what he chose to do, they would never think twice and do exactly as told, even if he asked them to sacrifice their lives. Despite the revelations that had just taken place, they did not join the resistance. Fortunately for Yin Yanli, these men possessed a high level of spiritual power and expertise in Kung Fu. All of them were golden immortals, and each of them could easily fight off 100 or even 1,000 common people. Scornfully, Yin Yanli threw an icy look at those who decided to rebel against him. Dark Imperial Guards, take down the rebel forces immediately, he commanded. Yes, all of the armed men in black answered in unison. Their swords were quickly drawn and aimed directly at those who rebelled against Yin Yanli. Gu Shijiu thought that she would witness the battle between Di Fui and Yin Yanli before anything else happened. It was out of her expectations for Yin Yanli's own people to turn against him. Although these armed men in black all had their faces covered, Gu Shijiu could still tell that these men were locals from the Shura world. Logically speaking, they should be conscious enough to know that they should not be working for Yin Yanli. Therefore, Gu Shijiu predicted that they had either been brainwashed or under Yin Yanli's control. With this knowledge, she quickly leaped forward and grabbed one of the armed men. She needed to read his pulse to know what was really going on. Her actions were so quick that the man had not even got the chance to see what was happening. Instantly, Gu Shijiu was already sure that something was not quite right about the man. They are being controlled, Gu Shijiu suddenly announced. She looked at Yin Yanli sternly as she added, "Yin Yanli, you have drugged them." Yin Yanli replied sarcastically, "What nonsense. I have fed them with some pills, but the pills were meant to help them improve their spiritual power, not control them. Chapter 2566. The Battle for Yunyanli then turned to the armed men and asked for their opinion. What do you think? Are you under anyone's control? No, the Dark Imperial Guards reassured. Are you conscious? Yunyanli continued to question them. Absolutely. We know what we are doing. We are not under anyone's control. What we have for the governor is our loyalty. The armed men no longer answered with brief replies. They all chimed in and claimed that they knew exactly what they were asked to do. Yunyanli seemed relieved by the men's reassurances. Bitterly, he looked at Gu Shijie with a sense of hatred as he added, Gu Shijie, everything I have done was for you, and yet, you disregard it all. Today, you even chose to stand by the Devil King, and even made a false accusation against me. He was, indeed, feeling a little wronged. Apparently, he had not brainwashed the Dark Imperial Guards. He only gave them a type of pill that he had made using a method taught to him by the mysterious voice in his dreams, claiming that the pills could help to strengthen the soldiers. Their power would be greatly increased, but the advancement did come at a price. Some of these people would gradually lose their emotions and slowly become cold-blooded. Generally, it was something beneficial for Yunyanli. He did not harm these men, nor did he intend to control them. Therefore, he was able to explain himself confidently. So, are you saying that you did not control them? Gu Shijie asked sarcastically. All of a sudden, she took out her lute and started playing it. The crowd was generally unaffected, but the black troops all responded in terror. Gu Shijie did not say anything but continued playing her instrument. She had played a melodious piece which the audience found to be pleasant. In stark contrast, the black troops all behaved as if some lethal voodoo had cursed them. Soon, all of them started trembling and spitting out blood. In the pool of dark purple blood, numerous bugs could be seen crawling about. It was a disgusting sight. The crowd was shocked. They soon noticed that the men were no longer shrieking, and the colors slowly returned to their pale complexions. All of them stood gazing at one another in utter amazement. They knew that Yunyanli was wrong, but still, they acted according to Yunyanli's command regardless. Perhaps they would even kill their own parents and think they were doing the right thing with a false sense of righteousness. Now that they regained their consciousness, they felt foolish for their earlier responses. They looked at the crawling bugs in the pool of blood, and started wondering what the creatures actually were. Gu Shijie explained, These are from the dark obedience venom. If you keep taking it over a long period, you will lose your sense of emotion, and be at your master's disposal. The Dark Imperial Guards were stunned. At this point, they were conscious and finally able to think straight. Without hesitation, they chose to join the rebellion as well. In the past, they were Yunyanli's most trusted men, so they were the ones who carried out the dirtiest, most secretive missions. For example, Yunyanli had asked them to do some of the most ruthless things, such as arresting those who challenged Yunyanli's authority. They were also summoned to kill the common people in the most violent ways possible. Their spirits would then be tied to a spiritual stone and used as an element to support the star formation by channeling a continuous flow of resentment and dark energy. As soon as the truth was revealed, everyone gasped in horror. People were indignant at Yunyanli's cruelty. Many were outraged and eagerly wanted to get revenge for their loved ones. Finally, Yunyanli conceded that it was the end of his reign in the Shura world. Nothing could ever save him from the plunge he was experiencing. Chapter 2567. The Culprit. Not too long ago, Yunyanli was surrounded by his people who worshipped him and regarded him as their savior. He was a man who could be proud of his status and what he had achieved in such a short period. But now, in less than 15 minutes, he was the outcast in the city that he owned. Meanwhile, the culprit behind this turn of events was right in front of him. It was none other than Deity. To make matters worse, Deity's parents had ruined his family. He used to be an honorable prince in the upper bound, but things took a turn for the worst when Deity's folks defeated his parents. Now Deity himself had ruined his reputation. Ha 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 ha. Yunyanli laughed sarcastically as he looked at Deity with scary red eyes. Difui, it's all because of you. Then he stretched out his palm, and a long blue sword suddenly appeared. Let us fight to settle all of this once and for all. I have a huge debt to repay you. The hatred between them could only be cleaned with blood. One of them had to die. Difui had been faintly glaring at him, but only said a few words in reply. Good. I will fulfill your wish. The fight between these powerful men could easily turn everything within a few miles around them into dust. Hence, Yanli swept through the people around him and said coldly, "Go away." Everyone looked at each other and slowly retreated. Meanwhile, Difui squinted at them and faintly said, "There is no need." He waved his hand and set a wizardry barrier around him. Only Yanli and Difui were inside the wizardry barrier. Therefore, the others around them would remain unaffected. The wizardry barrier was almost transparent, but everyone could still see it. Perhaps, due to its transparency, everyone still felt unsafe being too close to it. Hence, none of the common people came too close to the barrier. Only Gu Shijio, Feng Ruhua, and the rest of the guardians of the Devil Kingdom were watching from close by. Of course, the young palace master also stayed nearby. Yanli could not help but take a look at the people standing at the walls of the barrier. His eyes suddenly flashed with sorrow. The people who were willing to stay close to the barrier were only those who genuinely cared about their leader. There were more than 10 people who were there for Difui. However, only one person seemed to be on Yanli's side, which was the young palace master. The poor man did not realize that he was still wearing his wedding attire, which was a happy and lively color. However, the colors completely contradicted his current mood, where he felt depressed and lonely. Who had he worked hard for? Unfortunately, the person he loved did not love him back. He sincerely wanted to marry her, and tried to give her the best that he could. Everything was carefully prepared, but now it was all just a joke. He took an opportunity to glance at Gu Shijio, who was now in her original appearance thanks to Difui. Yanli could see that she was entirely focused on Difui, and that she was not concerned for him at all. Subconsciously, he heaved a sigh of disappointment. Perhaps, it was time for him to wake up from his dream. It was time for him to let go. Suddenly he looked up and laughed. Difui, we will not stop fighting until one of us is dead. He then charged forward toward Difui to start the battle. Gu Shijio stood just outside the barrier, watching the two of them intensely. The two fighters moved swiftly, and each of their moves was a dazzling sight. Gu Shijio was still very familiar with Difui's arsenal of moves. After all, they had been together for so long. In the early stages of the battle, she seemed to be more relieved as she could tell that he had already recovered. In fact, he was more powerful than he ever was as the Devil King. All of his moves seemed graceful and effortless, as if everything came naturally to him. Chapter 2568. The Culprit, too. This person was like the sun. No matter where he went or what he did, he was shining and always attracted people's attention. He had certainly caught Gu Shijia's eyes the entire time. The pain of losing him hundreds of years ago always seemed very recent and vivid for Gu Shijio. Nonetheless, watching him right in front of her had made everything different. She could not wait to get into his arms and travel to a place where they could have their personal, intimate time. Unfortunately, they had to settle the mess in front of them first. Difui was a natural leader. He had been the lord of the lower bound for nearly 10,000 years. It had become a habit for him to take care of affairs. With the memories from his previous life restored, he would definitely use his knowledge to punish the bad people here and return the Shura world to its orderly state. This came as a relief to Gu Shijio. Although she only stayed there for more than a year, she had already regarded this place as one of her homes. She also wished that the people here could get back to their normal lives. She had been thinking about how to restore the order here, but could not seem to find a way to do so on her own. Nevertheless, it would seem that she had found the solution to her problem. Since Difui had returned to her side, she was certain that things would get sorted out swiftly. Although Gu Shijio was generally considered an independent person, whenever Difui was around her, she somehow always relied on him. She knew that she could depend on him for anything that she needed. As she contemplated the situation she was now in, The two men remained busy fighting intensely in the wizardry barrier. For once, Gu Shijiu finally looked at Yun Yanli. She knew that he was a very capable fighter who had tricks up his sleeves. However, he was not Di Fuyi's opponent. In fact, she could tell that he would lose the battle sooner or later. The man himself realized that he was bound to lose, and his face turned pale. He did not expect to be beaten by a child despite his many years of hard work. He was certainly sad to learn that, but there was nothing he could do about the inequality between them. He was just not as talented as his opponent. Despite giving it his all, he did not even damage Di Fuyi's clothing. Nevertheless, he was a man of his word, and would not run away. He would not stop until one of them was dead. Perhaps he was simply not destined to win the battle and get the girl of his dreams. As a last resort, he put together a flurry of attacks to try to hurt Di Fuyi and turn the tide into his favor. Even if he did not win, he should at least put up a real fight against this man who had taken everything from him. This fierce battle generated a lot of excitement for the crowd. The people on both sides were very nervous to the point where it clearly affected their breathing. They did not even dare to blink their eyes as they were afraid that they would miss something special. The people's attention was on the fight in the wizardry barrier, that no one noticed that Zhu Duqing was quietly approaching Gu Shijiu. He was now only 1 foot away from her. He suddenly appeared and grabbed Gu Zijia's wrist. His speed was comparable to Gu Zijia's teleportation, and there was no time for a reaction from the crowd. He thought that he would definitely capture her, so he said, "Shijiu, you have to follow me." However, before he could finish his sentence, he was shocked by something and quickly retrieved his hand. Chapter 2569. Untitled chapter. The wrist he grabbed seemed to be cold and hard with sharp edges. It almost cut his hand. Instead of grasping Gu Zijia's wrist, Zhu Duqing caught a sharp sword. Furthermore, the person who was holding the sword was actually Di Fuyi. Zhu Duqing took 2 successive steps backward, and found that the wizardry barrier had been broken. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli also stumbled and almost fell to the ground at that moment. His handsome face was now green and white. Upon catching his breath, he said, "Di Fuyi, you have not been concentrating on the fight." When the two of them were fighting, Yun Yanli was utterly overpowered by Di Fuyi. He had resorted to using his full strength to attack Di Fuyi while risking his defense. He wanted to force Di Fuyi to go on the defensive. However, he did not expect Di Fuyi to suddenly rush out of the wizardry barrier and settle matters with Zhu Duqing. From his actions, it was evident that even during the battle, he had diverted his attention to Gu Shijiu. Yun Yanli thought that even if he would not be able to defeat him, he could at least give the man a challenge and force him to use all his skills. He had certainly not expected the man to be thinking about other things during a clash with him. There was no doubt in his mind now that there was a huge gap between them. Yun Yanli then realized that he had sold his soul and sacrificed his life to cultivate and improve himself, but was still unable to best a child. If that were the case, what was all of this for? With a pale face, Yun Yanli stood weakly in the barrier. All of a sudden, he vomited a mouthful of blood. The conviction that had always supported him as a mountain collapsed. His body trembled as he said, "Di Fuyi, kill me." Di Fuyi did not look at him. Instead, he pulled Gu Shijiu into his arms and asked, "How are you? Have you been hurt?" Gu Shijiu felt a warmth in her heart. However, she seemed to giggle all of a sudden. It would appear that he regarded her to be as fragile as a piece of paper. In actuality, Zhu Duqing did not touch her at all. So why would she have been hurt? In fact, she was trying to teleport away when Zhu Duqing was just about to catch her wrist. Even if Di Fuyi did not rush out to save her, she would still be safe. Nonetheless, she liked his care for her, so she leaned her head in his arms. "Fortunately, I have you. I am fine." Di Fuyi then kissed her lips. "Be careful, don't let that pig get you." Zhu Duqing was speechless. He was a bamboo, not a pig. His eyes narrowed as he suddenly smiled. "Di Fuyi, your return seems too timely." Di Fuyi faintly replied, "Of course." He looked at the man and asked, "Who are you?" At that point, Zhu Duqing removed the disguise on his body, revealing his real face. "I am Mr. Bamboo. Devil King, don't you know me?" The crowd looked at each other as if searching for answers. Many people had heard of Mr. Bamboo from the Devil Kingdom. And of course, they were aware of the existence of the Devil King. But what were the two of them doing here? No one expected them to come to the ordinary cities. Humans and devils had always been enemies. The people here had an intuitive fear of the devils, so the onlookers who had already been close to the battlefield were now stepping back. Mr. Zhu is just your pseudonym. I am asking you who you really are. Di Fui was not a fool. He continued. If I am not mistaken, it is you who is the culprit behind the scene. Am I right? Zhu Duqing looked down. After a brief moment, he seemed to look up again with a smile. Why do you think so? I am only asking for clarification. Are you having trouble answering my question? This problem had obviously caught the attention of the crowd, who were all curious as they had been personally affected by it. Countless pairs of eyes looked over as they waited for Zhu Duqing to answer. Chapter 2570. The culprit behind the scenes. Zhu Duqing stood silently as he pondered his next move. After a brief moment he looked up and smiled as he said, Yes, I am the one behind it all. Everyone in the square broke their silence. They were furious, especially those who had been in the Shura world for the longest time. Why? Why did he want to do this? Their angry chants started to drown the entire Zhengde square. Some of the warriors were ready to chop Zhu Duqing into minced meat to avenge the death of their family members. Nevertheless, Zhu Duqing seemed to be indifferent to their plight. Whenever anyone charged forward toward him, he would merely wave his sleeves and watched as several light waves greeted those who rushed in. The light waves were orange-red and extremely bright. It appeared like a divine light that wanted to bless its believers. Those who rushed over were the ones that had suffered the most under Zhu Duqing's evil tricks. Acting purely out of emotion, they simply ran into the waves with open arms. Meanwhile, in the eyes of other people who were still watching from behind, they saw many sharp blades in the orange-red light wave that could turn anything into dust. Seeing that those people were going to plunge into the orange-red light, the audience exclaimed in fear. As they started to scream, a few colorful waves suddenly appeared and collided with the orange-red waves. Several thunderous sounds were momentarily heard. It shocked the crowd to the point where most of them retreated. The ones in the very front line that acted out of haste were shaken. Once the light waves dispersed, they looked up only to find several large pits and a stone pillar that had been cut into two pieces. The part of the stone pillar that had been cut off was shattered into pieces, revealing strange orange-red worms that were half the size of rice grains. If they did not look carefully at it, they would think it was just debris in the smoke. Apparently, this was left behind from Zhu Duqing's palm. If it were not the colorful light that intercepted the orange-red light waves, those who had rushed over would have been turned into minced meat. The crowd gasped in shock and decided not to act rashly. Zhu Duqing looked around and smiled. I didn't expect your skills to return to you so quickly. However, how long can you save them? While laughing, he heaved his sleeve again and many orange-red light waves emerged from his palm. But this time, the light was aimed at a few pots rather than the people. All of a sudden, a whistling sound could be heard from the 8 huge pots that were still burning. A lot of mist suddenly emerged from all the large pots, and seemed to come together to form something. Soon, the crowd could see that it had turned into a few strange-looking animals. Taotai, Bifeng, Feifei, Lai Tianho, Qiongqi. They were the ancient beasts whose blood burned in the respective huge pots. These beasts seemed extremely out of control when they emerged. They screamed loudly and rushed to the crowd. There were more than 10,000 people in the crowd now, which was certainly bad news. Just one of these beasts was enough to destroy the earth, but there were 8 of them. The people panicked and fled without thinking. However, after running a few steps, they realized that something was wrong. It seemed like they were trapped and could not run at all. They could only watch as the beasts spurted yellow sand, created a hurricane, started a flood, and blasted fireballs at them. The vast majority of the people were shackled in the square. They were screaming, crying, calling for their kids and cursing, causing various noises everywhere. The entire square was in chaos. In this turmoil, Zhu Duqing suddenly issued a long whistle that corresponded to a whistling sound in the distance. Chapter 2571. The Culprit Behind the Scenes 2. The whistling was getting nearer and nearer, and suddenly, a long black shadow flashed in the sky just next to Zhu Duqing. Along with the appearance of this black shadow, the people noticed their surroundings abruptly darken. Oddly though, the shadowy figure seemed to be shining. The scales on its body were black and translucent. In addition, it had a horn on its head that looked like a pearl. It was a candle dragon. Gu Zijia's heart sank as she recognized it. Meanwhile, the candle dragon rolled around in the air, while Zhu Duqing stood on it. In the brief moment that the shadow appeared, the man had changed his attire from a dark green robe to a black robe. There seemed to be stars studded on his black robes, which made him look like the starry night sky. With the candle dragon under his feet, it really looked like a powerful illusion. Just moments ago, the crowd wanted to tear off his skin, but now everyone was frightened to the point where their legs were soft. In fact, they all involuntarily felt like bowing to him. Some were on their knees and could not emerge. Who was he? How could he have such a strong aura? Zhu Duqing, who appeared in front of Gu Shijio, had always covered his true appearance and character. There were times where he was a bit arrogant, and even times where he was a bit hilarious. However, now that he had taken off his disguise, the previous temperaments were all gone. He no longer masked his true appearance either. The people noticed that the man had long black hair that was covered by a black feather-like jade crown. However, perhaps because he was too far away, the people here could not see his face clearly. Nonetheless, they certainly felt his aura, and believed he must be someone with noble status. He stood elegantly on the back of the candle dragon, and looked down on the people. It was like watching the ants swaying in the mud. He certainly looked very proud while standing over the people. In the square, the 8 evil beasts had completely surrounded everyone, and were advancing to the center of the square. What should we do, master? The young palace master tightly pulled on one of Yin Yanli's sleeves. She and her subordinates were trapped as well. Unfortunately, it seemed that Yin Yanli had lost himself, and was staring into the abyss. He just stood there, and did not respond or move. The young palace master had to pull him away from a fireball that was headed his way. He would surely have been burnt badly if she had not done so. Yin Yanli, the big pots were set here by you. Do you know of any way we can escape? Di Fui finally spoke to the man. Yin Yanli finally raised his head and looked at his enemy, who had clearly defeated him. Why should I tell you? Do you care about the safety of these people? Di Fui sounded cold. They turned against me. Why should I care about them? Yin Yanli refuted. What about your subordinates who have stayed by your side all the time? Don't you care about them? Yin Yanli hesitated but replied nonetheless. They have betrayed me. He was apparently not able to finish his sentence. Di Fui glared at him but did not speak further. Yin Yanli did not appreciate his attitude and angrily said, They betrayed me. Should I forgive them and save them? Di Fui still did not speak. However, the cries from the surrounding people were getting louder and more desperate. Anyone with compassion would certainly struggle to listen to it, and not help. Yin Yanli's face was still pale while he still kept his fingers in his sleeves. The person who came to him in his dreams had him how to set up this array. He had only learned how to ignite the flame. He never thought that there would be fierce beasts running out of these copper pots. In all honesty, he did not know what to do. He was powerless. He looked around him and heard a cry in the crowd from a child. He watched as the child was caught in some yellow sand and was swallowed alive. Chapter 2572. The Culprit Behind the Scenes 3. The child's parents were frantic. To save their child, they jumped into the sand without care or concern for their own life. Yin Yanli's heart trembled at the sight. It reminded him of the time that he had encountered great danger when he was young. His father almost risked his life to save him. Instantly, he flew over and pulled the child out of the yellow sand. He also managed to rescue the child's parents at the same time. Di Fui looked at him and saw his compassion for the child. His voice was calm as he spoke. The 8 ferocious beasts would completely ruin this place. Even if you want to save a few of your people, you can only do so temporarily. Yin Yanli naturally understood this, but he really did not know the solution that Di Fui needed. He looked around at the people who were in tears, and the subordinates who had been desperately fought for him. He was sad and repeatedly shook his head. I can't help. I really can't help. I didn't expect these beasts to appear in the fire. His eyes were red, and he could not finish his sentences. He was faintly aware that he was being used all this while. He finally realized that the god, who taught him all these tricks in his dreams, was using him. His handsome face turned green at the thought, but Deity did not let him go. What else did the god in your dream teach you other than the star formation? Did he tell you how to break the array? Yin Yanli almost collapsed. The starry arrays were not made by me. I am only responsible for maintaining them. It would appear that the heavenly being did not teach him the way to break it, and also did not even show him how to set it up. Deity found this believable, as the starry array in Lagua City was never restored by the man, even after Deity manipulated it. Being such a careful man, it did not make sense for him to leave such a significant matter unfixed. Feeling disheartened, Yin Yanli stood in the square, feeling that his entire life was a joke. He looked at Deity, who was only a few steps away from him, and suddenly he looked up and laughed. I have been used all this time, but I am able to take you to the grave. I will treat it as revenge for my parents. Deity waved his sleeves and faintly said, The dreams that you have experienced are not to be trusted. This kind of array could not trap us at all. The ordinary citizens, as well as your subordinates, are going to pay the price for everything you have done. Yin Yanli did not respond. Deity stared at him thoughtfully and continued, There is only one way to save the people of this city, but you need to pay the price. What is the price? Your arm. Yin Yanli remained silent again. The young palace master had been listening to their conversation. At this time she could not help but jump in and cried, Master, don't listen to him. He is lying to you. He is lying to you to weaken you. It's a trap. Deity did not care about the young palace master. Yin Yanli, the choice is yours, but you don't have long to decide. I will count until 3. If you don't give up your arm, I will take my own people and leave yours behind. 1. Yin Yanli did not wait for him to finish counting. I agree. Everyone around them heard their conversation. At first, the crowd was angry and full of grievances toward him. They wanted to kill him as a form of revenge as well. However, they saw that he was willing to sacrifice for them, so the hatred in their hearts began to subside. The young palace master's face turned pale. She suddenly pulled out her 2 arms from her sleeves. If you have to use arms as a sacrifice, you can use mine. I use my 2 arms. Please don't take my master's arm away. Deity faintly replied, I must use his arm. It is useless even you cut off 4 of your limbs. The young palace master was speechless, but there was nothing she could do. In the end, they used Yin Yanli's arm to try to solve this mess. Chapter 2573. The Culprit Behind the Scenes 4. Yin Yanli never thought that he would need to trust his enemy's words one day. He also never imagined that he would be willing to contribute his arm to save other people. Not to mention that he had to do so in a very torturing way. He cut off his arm with his sword and poured his own blood into the 8 big copper pots. As the 8 evil beasts emerged from the copper pot, they treasured it a lot, and did not allow anyone to approach it. Yin Yanli had been in severe pain after chopping off his arm, but he still had to run between the 8 evil beasts to get his blood into the pots. It was a hazardous task for him. In the beginning, the young palace master followed him to fend off the 8 beasts. However, she was no match for any of them. She was almost critically hit by the paw of one of the beasts. Fortunately, Yin Yanli blocked most of the force from the attack in time, or she would have died then and there. Even though Yin Yanli had absorbed most of the attack, the young palace master was severely injured and vomited blood. She barely managed to get herself up, but she was determined to stay beside Yin Yanli. Seeing this, Yin Yanli turned her away by pushing her into the distance. Go away. I do not need your protection. Out of balance, the young palace master fell on one of her loyal subordinates. She looked at Yin Yanli with teary eyes, knowing that he cared about her despite his tone. Nevertheless, Yin Yanli was in a lot of danger. There were several times where the beasts almost killed him. If he had not cultivated to the level that he was, he would inevitably end up as a snack to one of those 8 creatures. Nonetheless, in spite of his prowess, the last 3 copper pots were a massive challenge for him due to his current condition. His robes were already stained purple by his own blood, and it really made him look pitiful as compared to his usual elegant self. Kuan Shui could no longer stand at the sidelines to watch. He flew over to Yun Yanli's side and raised his hand to help him block a poisonous wave of water. "Let me protect you." Kuan Shui was now at the level of a golden immortal. However, his attempted to block the water wave had turned his entire body numb. He was shocked by the severity of the attack and almost vomited from the sheer force. He raised his eyebrows in surprise as he never expected the 8 beasts to be so powerful. Luckily, he could recover reasonably quickly. After a short rest, he wanted to go back and help Yun Yanli. "Kuan Shui, come back. Let him do it." He heard Di Fui's voice from a distance. Kuan Shui was stunned and could not help but look at Di Fui. He replied by directed audio. "Boss, are you taking revenge on him for your personal hatred toward him?" Di Fui looked as though he was smiling as he asked, "What?" "Boss, if his blood is the key to break this array, he needs to be alive to finish the job. If he is killed in the process, how can he complete the task? Rest assured, even if he dies halfway, I can break this array." Di Fui spoke leisurely. Kuan Shui was speechless. "If this is the case, then why are you letting him? Devil King, can't you just kill him? Why put him through all the trouble? Do you think I have too much time on my hands?" Kuan Shui was furious and wanted to curse at Di Fui. Of course, he did not dare to say anything to him. Instead, he turned his attention back to Yun Yanli and pondered. Seeing him this way really made Kuan Shui sympathize with him. There was blood flowing out of his body profusely at this point. It was somehow a very strange situation as Kuan Shui was certain that Yun Yanli would have blocked his acupuncture point in order to stop the bleeding. However, the blood kept oozing out. Furthermore, the blood was not bright red as he expected. Instead, it looked rather purplish and pleasant. Chapter 2574. The Culprit Behind the Scenes 5. Gu Shijio frowned at the sight of his blood as she thought that Yun Yanli's blood was venomous. However, she was not very certain. Perhaps his blood was a different color because he had practiced with black magic? Furthermore, he had obviously fought with a vast number of ferocious beasts here in the Shura world in order to consume their spiritual stones. It could be that he had accumulated a lot of poison in his blood. The strange thing that Gu Shijio had also noticed was that the color of his blood seemed to be getting darker. It also appeared to get thicker over time. Was that a sign that he might die after completing the task set to him by Di Fui? She glimpsed at Di Fui, who was standing by her side with one of his hands holding her hand while the other was holding a flute. He was pondering something as he fixed his gaze lazily on Yun Yanli. Upon realizing that Gu Shijio was glancing his way, he gripped her hand a little tighter and asked, "Do you think that I am making him suffer unnecessarily?" Gu Shijio was always straightforward when she communicated with him. "Indeed, I had thought that you were intentionally making him suffer. But I no longer think you are since you asked me this way." Di Fui smiled. "Smart girl. Anyway, not everyone is as smart as you. I am sure they think that I am taking revenge on him." It was true. The crowd was looking at Di Fui resentfully. They did not agree with what he had put Yun Yanli up to. Moreover, many of the people watching used to be Yun Yanli's subordinates. Hence, the person was not a stranger to them. "Are you saving his life?" Gu Shijio seemed to have understood something. It seems as though he has been cultivating with black magic for too long, and his blood is now full of poisons. Is this a way to somehow purify him? Di Fui held her waist and continued in a softer tone. "I am taking revenge." Gu Shijio remained silent at that remark. Di Fui then added with an evil tone, "Of course, I spared his life because of the last bit of humanity he seems to have in his body." The venoms in the 8 great beasts were extremely potent. Perhaps anyone in the crowd would die if they came into contact with it. Fortunately, Yun Yanli's high level of dark power could neutralize the venoms of these creatures, and also reduce the amount of dark energy in his body. It was like fighting evil with evil. If everything went according to plan, Yun Yanli would possibly return to normal once he completes the assigned task. However, all of this was simply Defui's hypothesis. In a way, he treated Yun Yanli as a lab rat for his experiment. Yun Yanli was the person responsible for the 8 great beasts, so his blood had an effect on them. Defui had predicted that it could release the grievance in the beasts when his blood was added into the big burning furnace, which contained the blood of the 8 great beasts. That was the key to break this array. Nonetheless, he didn't need to tear his arm off to achieve this goal. Simply poking his fingers to get the blood out was sufficient. But Defui simply could not let him off the hook so easily. After all, he was never a kind-hearted person. Everyone thought that the beasts would be more obedient after Yun Yanli added his blood into all the 8 furnaces. However, the reality was the other way around. The difference was that they were now only targeting one person, Yun Yanli. The man trembled and nearly fell into Tao Tai's mouth. Kuan Shui decided to give him a hand. He rolled up his sleeves up and pulled Yun Yanli back. Everyone was frightened and could not wait to run away as they witnessed the horrible scenes. Stay still if you want to live. Defui's voice lingered in the air and entered everyone's ear. The crowd immediately froze. They trusted Defui a lot now, so they tried to ignore the ferocious beasts that were right in front of them. All of a sudden, Defui began to play his flute as he slowly floated into the air while the battle carried on. The melody and rhythm seemed extremely strange, as if it had the power to penetrate the leaves, water, and even the hearts of the people. Everyone was initially panicked and helpless. Some even got anxious to the extent they wanted to kill the people in front of them in order to escape. However, they were calmed unknowingly as they heard the music. The same condition applied to the 8 ferocious beasts that seemed to be calm at the moment. The crowd held their breaths as they remained silent. Finally, the beasts were tamed. Haha. Celestial Master Zhua is really powerful. Take this then. A voice suddenly crept into the air and broke the silence. As the crowd raised their chins to check on who had spoken, they saw a man in black robes who appeared with the candle dragon. The man smiled and retrieved a musical instrument of his own. It made a loud screeching sound, which seemed to shatter the hopes of the people in the crowd. The 8 great beasts started to attack violently again, as if they had received a new set of instructions. Defui quickly played his lute at a higher pitch and a faster speed, which was loud enough to cover the sound from Zhu Duking's instrument. Again, the people and beasts were calmed. It was a strange scene watching the 2 men battle with music in the air. They both battled hard and would not give up. Needless to say, the crowd certainly wanted Defui to win. Everyone knew that they would survive if Defui won the battle. In stark contrast, they would die tragically if the man in black won. Since many of them were musicians as well, they thought they would try to help Defui to overpower the man in black. Despite being very nervous, they tried their best to contribute to the battle. Unfortunately, it did not seem to have any effect on the battle. Anxiously, Kuan Shui grabbed someone's suona and blew into it. The suona produced the sharpest of sounds, and Kuan Shui wanted it to be heard by everyone. Nonetheless, the result was the same. No one seemed to hear it. Kuan Shui almost broke his cheek and jaw to blow the instrument earlier. Helplessly, he shook his head and said to the people around him, "Forget about it. We cannot do anything." Despite their lives being on the line, there was nothing that they could do. Chapter 2575. A different reunion. Just when the people were getting uneasy, a song seemed to be coming from the sky. The voice of the singer was lovely and magnetic. It almost seemed as though an angel was singing. What was unique was the fact that this voice was being accompanied by a musical instrument that played along in perfect unison. It was so beautiful as it echoed in everyone's ears. The crowd quickly looked to the direction of the singer and saw Gu Shijio standing on a boulder. Her voice really harmonized so well with the lute to the point where the crowd was so mesmerized and immersed in their song. Many people looked at Gu Shijio in awe. Most of them did not know that she had such a pleasant voice. Furthermore, her ability to perform together with Defui made them seem like a perfect match. Zhu Duqing could tell that their combined efforts had overshadowed his instrument. The beasts clearly became less and less violent. In fact, they soon disappeared. The crowd was certainly relieved to see it. Nonetheless, just when they thought the danger had passed, the man in black suddenly let out a loud sound that shook the earth. It felt as though the place was suffering from an earthquake. The people on the ground could barely stay on their feet. Furthermore, there was a terrifying roar coming from deep underground. The roar was petrifying because it sounded as though the creature had been suffering for years, but had finally escaped. Yin Yanli was standing there in a daze. He seemed to have lost his mind and soul. However, after hearing the screams from the underground, his facial expression changed. After a moment, he suddenly dug violently into the soil under his feet. Master? Master? The young palace owner was shocked and wanted to get through to the man. Yin Yanli seemed to be trembling. His arm was still bleeding, but he could not stop digging. The sound from the ground was getting louder, and the magnitude of the quake seemed to be growing. Oddly enough, there seemed to be turbulence in the sky as well as dark clouds emerged to cover the sky. It seemed as though a massive disaster was approaching. Difui frowned. He carried Gu Shijio and took a few steps back. Quickly, stay 10 feet away from this spot. Boom! A loud noise was heard, and a vast chasm suddenly appeared on the ground. A pair of skeleton-like bodies rose from the ground. The two men seemed to be attached to one another, with 8 cold chains running through their cheekbones and wrapped around their bodies at various angles. The condition of their faces was awful to the point where it was almost impossible to distinguish their genders. Perhaps these people had been badly tortured. They were mourning in pain, and their sounds seemed to trigger the 8 beasts again that had disappeared earlier. Gu Shijio had a feeling that these two people looked very familiar to her. When she was pondering the identity of these people, she suddenly heard Yin Yanli scream frantically, "Father! Mother!" Gu Shijio was shocked. Were these two people the old emperor immortal and queen? Yin Yanli rushed forward without any care or concern for his safety. Fortunately, Difui lifted his arm and pulled him back. "Don't! You'll be going to your death." Yin Yanli's eyes were red while his entire body was shaking. "That is my father and mother." Chapter 2576. A unique reunion. Kuan Shui could not hold himself back from speaking. "They are no longer your father and mother. They are evil spirits." The grievances on them were so significant that it could turn the entire place dark and cold. It seemed as though the whole of Zhengde Square fell into hell. Meanwhile, the 8 beasts approached the evil spirits to show their loyalty. All the people in the square seemed to be trapped in a thick fog. Those with low skills could hardly see their friends and family, who were less than 3 feet away from their side. People kept screaming in the mist to try to locate one another. "Mom? Mom." The voices of some children could be heard. "Mom is missing. Help! Something bit me." The crowd seemed to be in a frenzy all of a sudden. But unfortunately, no one could really tell what was going on. They only heard horrible eerie chewing sounds in the depths of the darkness and gasping sounds, which made it seem that some people in the audience were suffocating. The feeling was absolutely horrifying. Those who were near to Difui tried their best to get as close to him as they could. They had thought to themselves that it would be their best chance of survival. Fortunately, Gu Shijio had a pair of sharp eyes and a high spiritual power. Having surveyed the area, she knew for certain that the chaos was caused by the 2 evil spirits that had emerged from the hole in the ground. "Everyone, hold hands and stand together. Those who know each other, please hold your hands. Stay far away from the big hole. The evil spirits are taking people in there." Gu Zijia's voice offered the panicked crowd some hope and direction. The crowd could only oblige to her instructions. Difui signaled Feng Ruhua and the rest. They understood what he wanted to do and spread out immediately to stand around the crowd to protect them. On the other hand, Yin Yanli's subordinates looked to each other and silently dispersed, forming a wall to protect the ordinary people in the middle. Difui pinched his fingers together to cast a spell. All of a sudden, a transparent hood fell from the sky and covered the people in it. This would serve as a shield to prevent any more people from being captured. Everyone could finally clearly see what had gone on around them. They were shocked. The 2 evil spirits stood with their backs facing each other, while the iron locks on their bodies had been broken in half. There were a few people who they seemed to have consumed, their lifeless bodies laid under their feet. Meanwhile, one of them was holding a man up against his will. The big man looked quite strong, but there was absolutely nothing he could do to escape. In the blink of an eye, he was torn in half. It was a horrific scene to those who saw it. Some people gasped and covered their mouths, preventing themselves from screaming. The two beings sucked the flesh and blood of the big man in an instant, and then stretched out countless threads that circled the wizardry barrier. However, the threads could not seem to penetrate the barrier. Chapter 2577. A unique reunion, too. At the tips of those threads were tiny mouths. When the mouths were closed, people could not see anything, but once they were opened, they were about the size of a thumb. It looked very frightening when these silk-like threads with the mouths attached itself to the people. Fortunately, they could not sneak into the wizardry barrier set by Deity. Instead, they spread outwards, like vines extending in all directions. Haha. Deity, you can probably protect these 10,000 people. But, can you defend the whole Shura world? This immortal Shura grass will spread endlessly. In the end, the entire Shura world will be consumed. The man in black chucked in the sky as the words he uttered resonated in everyone's ears. Everyone's facial expression changed. How could the people of the Shura world possibly survive? Zhu Duqing, why are you doing this for? Gu Shijiu asked. The man in black looked down from the sky, and his eyes fell on Gu Shijiu. He did not answer her question immediately. Instead, he sighed first. Master Shijiu, do you really think that I am Zhu Duqing? The man's voice was rather remarkable, and it had a strange effect on the crowd. Apparently, he used some interesting technique to alter his voice, so that when the women present heard his voice, their hearts almost melted. However, Gu Shijiu merely frowned. She was immune to this kind of charm. I know that Zhu Duqing is just your alias. Is this candle dragon the donkey? The black man sighed softly. I know that I can't hide anything from you. Yes, it is the donkey. He then patted the head of the candle dragon. Little Mo, let's say hello to an old friend. The candle dragon snorted, shook its head, and screeched. This time, it was not the sound of a donkey, but it still resonated throughout the sky. In a brief moment, Defuy's wizardry barrier was shattered. The people were exposed again, and the thread-like silks took the chance to spread themselves around the people. Fortunately, Feng Ruhua and the rest were guarding them. Therefore, as soon as the filaments arrived, their swords had chopped them off. The filaments were made of extremely tough material, however. They were not afraid of the knives and weapons used by the people. Those with weaker skills could not do any damage to the threads. Instead, their weapons were snatched away with ease. Defui quickly cast a few spells in succession, and every attack destroyed a few of the vines. The two skeleton grievances screamed shrilly as if their limbs had been cut off. There was a black sticky liquid that splattered out from the broken filaments, as if it was their blood. Don't hurt them. Yun Yanli almost rushed over, and wanted to protect the two skeleton figures. Unfortunately, just as he arrived, he was caught by the vines. Once the filaments captured their prey, it would pull them into its grasp. Kuan Shui frowned at the sight. He had no particular feelings for Yun Yanli, but he did empathize with the man after all the troubles he went through lately. Moreover, they had already got married by accident. Although it was a mistake, he had a strange sense of responsibility toward Yun Yanli. He did not want to see Yun Yanli being sucked up and turned into a skeleton, so he immediately leaped into the sky and aimed his weapon at the filaments that had captured Yun Yanli. Shua! His long sword stabbed into the vines. In an instant, they grew rapidly around the sword. Chapter 2578. A unique reunion. 3. Kuren Shui could only let go of his prized weapon for fear that he might get sucked in as well. He could not help but turn to look at Defui for a solution. Master. He was asking for help. Defui had already re-established the wizardry barrier around the people. When he saw Yun Yanli being dragged by the two skeletons, he pinched his finger, wanted to do something, but he opted not to continue. Many people looked at Defui, knowing that he was the only one who could save Yun Yanli. The young palace master, who was also trapped inside the wizardry barrier, kneeled on the ground and kowtowed to Di Fui to him to save her master. Gu Shijie was also concerned for the man, but she did not urge Di Fui to do anything. She mere clenched her fists beside him. Di Fui took her hand, and found that her fingertips were a little cold. He slightly stunned and said, "Don't be afraid." Gu Shijie nodded. "Rest assured, I am not afraid. I believe in you." She believed that Di Fui must have his reason to do so. He did not need to explain anything to her. Di Fui was quietly relieved and patted her little hand. Di Fui was also staring at Yun Yanli. The spell on his fingertips had been ready but was not cast yet. Meanwhile, the skeletons that had originally wanted to tear Yun Yanli into two seemed to have changed their minds. Yun Yanli, on the other hand, trembled in fear. He wanted to break free but decided against it. "Father! Mother!" Yun Yanli did not care about the vines on his body. Instead, he rushed to the two dead bodies and hugged one of the legs of the skeletons. Who did this to you? Who is the culprit?" The bright red lights on the two dead bodies seemed to have dimmed for a moment. However, the vines on Yun Yanli had coiled themselves around his neck and waist. The mouths of the vines were wide open and ready to bite, but somehow it was hesitating. Everyone held their breath as they watched everything unfold. Not a single sound was made out of fear that they would distract the two murderous corpses. Whoa! Ah! The two dead bodies suddenly screamed shrilly, and the 8 beasts followed suit. Apparently, the 8 beasts were controlled by the two corpses. Perhaps even connected to them. The 8 beasts were formed by blood, which indicated that they had already died, but their souls were imprisoned in the blood. As for these two withered corpses, they seemed to be very old. The cold iron chains on their bodies were rusty. It usually took more than hundreds of years for a cold iron to rust. Yun Yanli seemed to understand something from observing all these closely. He suddenly looked up at the man in black standing in the fog and angrily shouted, "It's you! You caused them to be like this. What did they ever do to you? Why would you want to treat them this way?" The man in black sighed. "Stupid kid. All the credit goes to you. Did you not know that every time you practiced your black magic, you were hurting them more and more?" Yun Yanli's face was ashen as he clenched his fists in his sleeve. What? Good boy. Being so intelligent, you should understand what I am saying. Whenever you practiced, you were sucking the soul of your parents. In a way, they were indirectly passing their skills to you. The only difference was that it was an excruciating process for them. Chapter 2579. A unique reunion for. Yun Yanli's eyes turned red just thinking of the words uttered by the man in black robes. He stared directly at the man and yelled, "You bastard! You are the one who taught me all these blasphemies in my dreams." The man in black raised his hand and touched his nose. A smile could be seen on his face. "Good boy, you finally recognize me. Back then, you always respected me and referred to me as a god. I have helped you improve your skills dramatically and never tricked you. But now, you are so ungrateful to me for everything that I have done. This is not right." The establishment of these 9 town serial arrays required a super powerful array of grievances, right? The man in black decided to reveal everything. Yes, it requires the grievances of great deities that are deadly. The Emperor Immortal couple were the most suitable ones. Not only the Emperor Immortal couple, but also the 8 beasts, right? It seems that I can't really hide anything from you. The man in black looked to the sky and sighed. It is tough to meet all these conditions. I have taken around 10,000 years to do so. Di Fui's eyes darkened. 10,000 years? Had this trap been schemed for over 10,000 years? Were Yun Yanli's parents considered victims of this evil man's evil plan? The evil man seemed to have guessed what Di Fui thought in his heart. He spoke leisurely. "The original candidates were your current parents, but they were hard to take down. They managed to escape, so I switched my target to the Emperor Immortal couple. If what you said is true, then are you the reason why Yun Yanli fell into the Shura world?" Gu Shijie suddenly interrupted. The man turned his attention to Gu Shijie and smiled. "Of course. The Emperor Immortal and his wife are the sources of the grievances array, and their grievances can only be absorbed by their children to achieve the best results. Yunyanli, being the most talented of the few children they had, made my job very easy. He glanced at Yunyanli and sighed again. Unfortunately, he is too indecisive, fearful, and easily affected by his emotions. That is the reason why he is trapped in this situation today. It was his fortune to have this kind of character. Otherwise, he would have become a peerless killer in your hands, right? Gu Shijio interrupted and looked at the man in black. She asked again, "Am I right?" The man's eyes flashed. The way he looked at Gu Shijio was very gentle and loving, however. "Shijio, everything you said is right. You are highly intelligent." He looked at Yunyanli like looking at a prized weapon and said with regret, "In fact, I nearly made it come true." He looked around slowly and asked, "Do you know what my plan was? I wanted to destroy Defuy's jade statue. I knew that his soul would be seriously injured, and the 8 beasts would then destroy all the people in the Shuro world. The grievances will be completely absorbed by Yunyanli, and he will become the most powerful being in the world. No one could be his opponent. More importantly, he would have lost his mind and listened to my every instruction. I could use him to conquer the 6 worlds." Everyone was shocked and could not comprehend the magnitude of the consequences. They all looked at the black man in utter surprise. He had taken so many years to train a peerless killer. "You are crazy." Kuan Shui was brave enough to say what was on everyone's minds. The man in black did not care. In fact, he laughed. "You will never understand an ambitious man. Whatever. Your project with Yunyanli did not go according to your plan. He will also never be your peerless killing machine. Now that your plan has been fully exposed, what are you so proud of?" Gu Shijio coldly said. Chapter 2580. Mourning the dead. The man in black finally let out a delightful smile. "Has it been completely exposed yet?" he asked wickedly. His fingers twitched a little, and a spell was soon cast, targeting the 2 mummified corpses. Abruptly, they made a fearful howling, while sharp teeth grew in their mouths. Then they rushed towards Yunyanli in an eager attempt to bite him. The voice of the mysterious man was like a curse surrounding the square like an echo. "It is either you die, or they die. Yunyanli, you can choose to use the Scarlet Moon skill to absorb all of their grievances, and let their souls vanish in peace. Or you can choose to be a good son and sacrifice yourself for them to devour your flesh." Everything happened too quickly for Yunyanli to make a decision. After all these years, he finally realized that he was merely a tool in someone else's grand evil plan. The man was solely responsible for his parents' suffering, and yet he had always treated the man like he was a saint. Yunyanli finally understood what the man had done to break his family apart, but he no longer had the ability to avenge his parents. That is it, Yunyanli thought. He decided it was time to repay his parents for the misery that he had brought upon them. He did not want to live a guilty life anymore. He closed his eyes and awaited his death. However, before the corpses sank their teeth into Yunyanli's neck, Defui cast a spell in time to save him. A drop of liquid seemed to be absorbed by Yunyanli's skin. It felt cold and smelled rotten. Yunyanli opened his eyes, only to see the 2 corpses standing still right in front of him. Their faces were hideous, but tears could be seen rolling down their eyes. Were they crying? Did they recognize him? "Father, Mother, you know who I am, don't you?" Their mouths opened and closed in an uncontrolled manner, exposing their sharp teeth. Obviously, they were being controlled. Normally, they would do as instructed. However, they were reluctant to harm their child. "Oh," one of the corpses struggled in its first utterance. The sound was unclear, but Yunyanli could understand it. It asked him to go. It wanted him to leave. Obviously, they knew who he was. Yunyanli collapsed to the ground while a flood of tears streamed down his face. "Father, Mother, I am so sorry." He kneeled before the corpses and tearfully apologized. Oh, the 2 corpses started to shiver. Once again, they started howling. "Haha. Yunyanli, your parents are actually conscious, so they know exactly what they are doing despite being incapable of resisting. They are not willing to kill you, but their disobedience comes with a great price. They will suffer in pain for what they refuse to do. Therefore, you should absorb their souls for the last time, and free them from this entanglement. You should do what is best for them. The mysterious man's voice rang like an endless series of incantations in Yin Yanli's ears. With his fists tightly clenched, his palms started to bleed. It was a difficult decision. No matter what he chose, he would be doomed to damnation. Yin Yanli, listen to me and don't ask any questions. I know of a way. There is no need for you to absorb your parents' souls and become a killing machine. Your parents will not have to endure more pain either. They have suffered enough. However, your parents may vanish from this world and resume their reincarnations somewhere else. Defui spoke steadily. If you agree, do as I say and recite the Prajna mantra to channel your spiritual power. Bewildered, Yin Yanli paused for a moment to grasp the idea. Soon, he closed his eyes and pressed his hand against one of the corpses. Then he began the mantra. The man in black was pleased. The way he taught Yin Yanli to absorb one's grudge was the same. Presumably, he thought that Yin Yanli must have agreed to his wishes in an attempt to end his parents' suffering. Chapter 2581. Mourning the Dead 2. The man in black threw an icy look at Defui, and was awfully delighted by what he had seen. He was certain that Defui did not understand why Yin Yanli chose to meditate at this critical moment. Soon, Yin Yanli would lose all control after freeing his parents from their misery. The Shura world would be bound by death and destruction. It was sure to suffer a terrible fate. As soon as the killing machine was formed, there was nothing Defui could do to turn the situation around. It would not matter if he were the master of the heavenly law. Yin Yanli would be able to destroy Defui once and for all. Meanwhile, Defui looked very relaxed in his standing position. He was holding Gushijia with one hand as well as his flute in his other hand. He managed to secretly communicate with Yin Yanli using a unique method. No one else could intercept the messages or manipulate them. Nonetheless, he was the only one who knew this method of communication. So he had to ask Yin Yanli to refrain from replying to him. He just wanted to give Yin Yanli the information he needed to make the right decision. The way Yin Yanli meditated looked as though he was reciting the Prajna mantra, which misled the man in black to think that his plan had succeeded as soon as he saw Yin Yanli's familiar posture. The mysterious man's delight, however, did not last too long. All his hopes were shattered when he suddenly saw a golden blade, shining in Yin Yanli's left hand. It should not have been there. The golden blade shone in blinding lights with increasing intensity as the man in black finally realized that something had gone wrong. What are you doing? Stop it. He quickly launched an attack toward Yin Yanli as well. A seven-colored ray immediately absorbed the light before it harmed Yin Yanli. Defui was long prepared to defend the man whenever it was necessary. I am your enemy, not him, he announced with ease. It was too late for the man in black to do anything more. His face turned ashen at the sight of the blade that seemed to release a series of incantations. Determined, Yin Yanli closed his eyes and thrust forward with the blade in his hand. Ah! The two corpses let out a painful cry as the golden blade penetrated their mummified bodies. A source of illumination sheltered the two corpses in a bubble of peaceful light. Bit by bit, their deeply rooted grudge was purified by a steady ray of pure energy. The two corpses struggled at first but slowly gave in as if welcoming their salvation. Finally, they settled down peacefully. Sorry. Father. Mother. I am so sorry. I am sorry. Yin Yanli's hand trembled as he held the golden blade in his hand. He was forced to kill his own parents. Even though he was also setting them free from their suffering, many could resonate with how heartbroken he was at the moment. At the very end, the chains on the corpses had dissolved, freeing the corpses from their long torment. Tearfully, Yin Yanli collapsed to his knees. The corpses were still very unpleasant to look at, but their visages were no longer vile. Traces of their human form slowly returned, making them more recognizable. They closed their eyes and let their bodies glow in a faint light. Meanwhile, Yin Yanli finally let go of the blade. Still trembling, he looked blankly at the stains of black blood on his hand. Helplessly, he looked up again at them and watched them disappear into thin air under the pure light. He reached out to hold the light, but it was a futile effort. His hand froze in the air as soon as the traces of his parents disappeared entirely. Chapter 2582, Mourning the Dead 3. Yin Yanli did not move at first. His mind was filled with regret as he contemplated what he had done. Shortly after, he closed his eyes and finally cried, staining his robes with tears. A man would not usually cry unless he was deeply saddened. Hence, his action clearly portrayed how he felt. The man in black did not look pleased. Years of his efforts had gone to waste in the blink of an eye. He watched in disbelief as Yin Yanli took his parents' lives without turning himself into the killing machine that he had wanted him to be. It was impossible. He had been working on building and channeling the immense source of resentment for years. How could their grudge be purified so easily? Furthermore, the corpses were basically invulnerable to all forms of weapons or spells. Why would they die from one small stab from Yin Yanli? It did not make any sense. What was the weapon that Yin Yanli had just used? How could it be so powerful? The man in black was still absorbed in utter astonishment that he could hardly stay calm, even though he should be focusing on his battle with Deity. Their spiritual power and kung fu were about equal, so it was nip and tuck all the way until the man finally made a careless move as a result of his absent-mindedness. Deity struck him in the chest and pushed him back a few steps. He almost slipped off the back of the candle dragon. In an attempt to prevent itself from being hurt, the dragon quickly ascended a few feet to distance itself from Deity. The man in black did not quickly rush back into the battle with Deity. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the golden blade. It was certainly an odd weapon and did not look entirely like a blade. More accurately, it was a golden ruler with very sharp edges. The ruler did ring a bell. Gu Shijie once briefly showed it to him before. He was not interested in any sort of weapons back then, so he did not ask anything further about the ruler's features. Today, it turned out to be an unpleasant surprise for the man. How did the weapon end up in your hand? The man in black questioned Yin Yanli. However, the man remained seated on the ground, completely unresponsive. Gu Shijie stepped in and answered for him. He has always been the true owner of the golden ruler. I have merely returned the ruler to him. Their friendship was built from the acquisition of the golden ruler, when they worked together to retrieve it. Since their friendship had ended, the ruler was thus returned to him. The golden ruler had the special ability to purify any forms of evil power or spirits. With Defuy's guidance, the power of the golden ruler was maximized to its greatest extent, leading to its ability to overpower the evil grievances in the skeleton figures from before. With the disappearance of the two corpses, the 8 vicious beasts had lost their spiritual support and slowly disappeared as well. A great disaster was dissolved with ease. The man in black had fled. He was nowhere to be seen. In order to prevent Deity from going after him, he had to summon 3,000 soldiers and turn them into wild killing machines. These soldiers immediately started attacking the common people without any hesitation. It was a very surprising move. The team had not seen the massacre coming, so it took them a moment to rush to stop the soldiers from killing the innocent. Deity came up with a way to snap them out of the spell that the man in black had placed on him. He started playing a calming recital with his flute, and their senses returned to them shortly after. They had no idea what just happened or what they had been doing. However, their deployment was mainly to buy the man in black enough time to escape. Chapter 2583. Sweetheart, you are pregnant. Gu Shijie was not ready to let the man flee. He was the root of all their troubles. If they let him escape this time, he would definitely return in the future. She had made up her mind to go after the man, but was immediately held back by Deity. Stay here. You should not be chasing after him. Don't you want me anymore? He sounded jealous, which made Gu Shijie speechless at this point. She was going after a murderer, not her past lover. However, she was then convinced that she was not a match for the man. After all, she was only a junior immortal. There was nothing she could do even if she caught him. She might end up being held captive, which would be troublesome for Deity. He would be able to keep her safe if they went together, but he was fairly occupied by the aftermath of what the man left behind. The mysterious man had disappeared, but the troubles he had created were still haunting them. Di Fui had many problems to solve in a short period of time. Gu Shijiu looked at Yun Yanli, who was still sitting in a daze. He had not moved an inch, seemingly unaware of his bleeding arm, and undistracted by the chaos around him. Kuan Shui felt the need to give Yun Yanli some words of advice, so he sat beside him and tried to talk some sense into the unmoving man. Yun Yanli, it is time to come back. Your parents' passing is the salvation that they needed. You should not feel guilty for killing your parents. You had no other choice. Kuan Zui's words of comfort stunned Gu Shijiu. In her perspective, nothing he said was comforting at all. He was only making things worse. Hence, she decided to do it herself. Di Fui suddenly grasped her by the wrist to hold her back one more time. Hold on. What is the matter? Gu Shijiu was surprised. Could he be jealous? Di Fui's expression was hard to read most of the time. While she was still trying to understand his intention, he handed a cushion to her and asked her to sit. Listen to me. Sit down. I need to read your pulse. I am fine. I have not been poisoned. I feel great. Gu Shijiu did not understand his concern, so she tried to justify herself. Nonetheless, Di Fui had already placed his fingers on her wrist and signaled her to stay quiet. She did as told and sat quietly while waiting. Moments later, she could tell that his fingers trembled a little. Even though there was barely any change, Gu Shijiu was certainly sensitive enough to tell that something was not right. The look on Di Fui's face changed as well. He was no longer calm and relaxed. Naturally, Gu Shijiu started to worry. What could be the problem? Was she poisoned? Would she be dead in a few days? They had just been reunited, and had yet to enjoy any sweet moments together. Heaven would be the one to blame if she was really cursed with some incurable disease. A thought suddenly struck her. She was a doctor as well, so she could read her own pulse too. But just as she attempted to do so, Di Fui urged her to stop moving around. Be still. Anxiety took over her like wildfire as she tried to keep herself together. However, she chose to trust him and wait patiently for the result. Besides, if she were really ill, there was no way Di Fui could hide the truth from her. She could eventually examine her condition herself. Di Fui had spent some time examining her, as if unconvinced by what he had just discovered. Finally, he removed his fingers from her wrist. What is it? Gu Shijiu eagerly asked while tugging his sleeve. She continued. Do not attempt to lie to me. I can examine my pulse on my own. I want the truth. Di Fui took a long breath before giving her an answer that she had never thought possible. Sweetheart, you are pregnant. Stunned, Gu Shijiu could not believe her ears. It was impossible. She could not even recall when they last had any physical contact. All of a sudden, she recalled that they did have sex, but not physically. It was only between their souls. Back in the days, they had countless sex before, but none resulted in pregnancy. She was almost convinced that she was infertile. How did this baby suddenly show up in her womb? Chapter 2584, I am pregnant. If they had not made love to each other physically, how was she able to conceive a baby? None of this made any sense to her. Was she raped while she was unconscious? When the last possibility popped up in her head, she asked in shock. Who is the father? Di Fui was speechless. Gu Shijiu was dumbstruck by her own question. Soon, she tried to eradicate the embarrassment by explaining herself. I think that you might have misread the signs. I have not slept with you in a long while. How can I be pregnant? Di Fui continued to look at her without saying anything. Gu Shijiu felt even more uncomfortable under his intense gaze. I have no idea. I do not remember having any intimacy with anyone. Her face grew pale as she pulled his sleeve even harder. Was I be raped when I was unconscious? It was clear that she thought her last guess was the most accurate one. Therefore, Di Fui finally felt the need to stop her from overthinking. Don't overthink. The baby is mine. Although somewhat relieved, Gu Shijiu was still shocked. How could Di Fui be sure? Di Fui planted a soft kiss on her lips as she remained stunned. Nevertheless, The swift exchange of affection was enough to calm her down. Silly, don't you remember our sweet moments while we were trapped in the illusion? He whispered in her ear. But it was only our souls that were there. Our bodies were not. Baby, are you inviting me to do something? Do you want to get physical? Sadly, we cannot do it right now. We have a large company around. He was beating around the bush. Gu Shijio started to flush crimson at the thought of their intimate moments. I am serious, she said shyly as she gave him a gentle push. Sweetheart, I am serious too. Do you really think I will joke about something so important? Difui pulled her close at the waist to stop her from moving anywhere. But there are no buts. The baby is mine. Shijio, we are not like ordinary mortals. Their way of conceiving a baby does not apply to us. Gu Shijio was finally relieved. All was well. She reassured herself. I am pregnant. I have a baby. Haha. I am pregnant. Her head was suddenly filled with many happy thoughts as she had always wanted a baby. She gently caressed her belly and was happy to know that she was nurturing a baby, a new life that they both shared. From now on, they would be a family of 3. She would never be alone. In the fullness of her joy, her eyes winked in jubilant delight. She had a broad and bright smile on her face too. As disciplined as she was to keep her emotions to herself, the big smile on her face could no longer hide the delight that blossomed in her heart. Difui kissed her softly on her forehead. Her liveliness excited him. He loved to see her being so joyful, so much so that he wanted to hold her in his arms and squeeze her tightly. When he recalled their past, he remembered their bitter separation upon his death. He could immediately imagine how much pain she had suffered in those years of his absence. Hence, he could not help but kiss her even more and secure her more tightly in his embrace. She was pregnant with their baby now, and he was happy about it too. He wanted for her to have a baby before he was immortalized, so she had something to look forward to and guide her through the painful times. Unfortunately, everything about him was destined to be wiped away without a trace, so it was impossible for them to have a child back then. This time, it was a pleasant surprise. He could hardly believe his observation when he first examined her pulse. He had to be sure and tried to check it a few times to be convinced. He became so excited that he even went further, and even found out the gender of the baby. Chapter 2585. There was nothing she could do. Even if she was unwilling, he knew that she trusted him completely and wholeheartedly. She hardly showed her feelings to anyone, but at this very moment, she was smiling so innocently like a child. He could even share in her joy despite being in the company of others. A sudden thought struck Gu Shijio, so she quickly looked up and asked, "By the way, how can you be sure that the baby is yours? After all, we have been separated for such a long time. Anything could have happened." Dumbstruck, Difui was surprised that she still doubted herself. Had she been overwhelmed by joy to the point where she could not think straight? She looked silly to him, but in an adorable way, so he quickly felt the need to tease her. He knocked her head gently with his finger as he said, "Silly girl. Who do you think I am? Will I make a mistake in talking about my own child? I am not only sure about the baby, I also know that the baby is a girl." A girl? It had only been less than a week since they made love to one another. What she had in her belly was only a fetus, but it was already enough for him to tell the gender. Gu Shijio could not care less about the gender, as long as the baby was a child that they both shared. Joy filled her heart at the thought of the baby, which also reminded her of Hao Er. She clenched Difui's arm firmly and said, "When everything here is done, let's get Hao Er back." She paused a little before reassuring, "Hao Er is not my child. I found him in the wild, and was fond of him as soon as our eyes met. He feels just like my kin. When we pick him up, please treat him well. You can take him as your foster child." Difui remained quiet. "By the way, his surname is also Di. His name is Dihao. Don't you think that we are destined to meet? If you can already tell that the baby is yours even when she is still so small, you should be able to tell that the child is not actually my son. You should know that I am not lying." Difui looked at her fixedly and watched as her cheeks blushed scarlet. "I can certainly tell whether he is my son or not. Are you going to help him find his parents?" Gu Shijiu hesitated. As soon as she thought of giving Di Hao to his parents, her heart was immediately wrenched with discomfort. She already knew that she was not willing to send the precious child away. However, it would be better for the child to be with his birth parents. She sighed and answered with a firm nod. Yes, we have to give him back to his parents. Are you willing to? There was nothing she could do, even if she was unwilling. There was an exception, though. It will be a different case if his parents have already passed away. No, his parents are still alive. Also, they will be alive for a long time. Di Fui interrupted her with firm assurance. How do you know? I have foresight. Gu Shijiu did not argue with him. She knew very well that Di Fui could easily tell the future. Di Fui noticed her disappointment, so he quickly pulled her into his arms and gave her another kiss. Don't worry. I will treat him like my own son until he leaves us. The child was from the future. He must be a grown-up already when he traveled. However, he ended up becoming a baby when Gu Shijiu found him. In this case, there would come a time when he traveled back to the future, where he actually belonged. Di Fui could not tell when Di Hao was born. However, the baby that Gu Shijiu was carrying was obviously not him. Hey, are you both done with your public displays of affection? If so, it is time for us to do some proper work. I am done sharing in your unnecessary loving moments. Chapter 2586. He was not completely incorrigible. Kuan Shui shamelessly interrupted their private moment. Gu Shijiu finally withdrew herself from her sweet exchange with Di Fui, and turned to look at Kuan Shui. He had wrapped Yun Yanli's wounded arm. At this very moment, Kuan Shui was looking at the two of them with a discontented look in his eyes. Di Fui threw a stern look at him and said nonchalantly, Kuan Shui, what species are you? What do you know about affection? Just like that, Kuan Shui decided to keep quiet. He knew very well that he could not possibly outsmart the Devil King. Hence, he decided to avoid the argument and swiftly switched it to another serious topic. My lord, the bamboo man in black has already escaped. Should we clean up the mess here? How do you plan to do that? Di Fui asked. We should calm the affected people, get rid of the star formations, and treat those who are wounded. By the end of his proposal, he could not help but give Yun Yanli another sympathetic look. The man was still caught in a daze after the emotional shock of his parents' passing. I think he might have lost his soul. He has been sitting here for some time without making a single sound. He is completely unresponsive to anyone or anything, Kuan Shui said, seemingly concerned. Do you want to save him? I sympathize with his unfortunate encounter. At least, in the end, he has made the right decision and done something good for the people. Moreover, he did not set up the star formations by himself. He was only made responsible for supporting and strengthening the formations. He was not the cause of the massacre in the Shura world, but a tool of another wicked brain. When did you learn to be so compassionate? Di Fui said scornfully. Have you legitimately thought of yourself as his partner after the wedding? With a pause, Kuan Shui argued. How is that possible? I will never put myself below another man. Di Fui answered playfully. Below another man? Kuan Shui knew that he had said something he should not, so he answered awkwardly. It is all but a misunderstanding. I did not mean it literally. I am only a little soft-hearted due to the man's devastations. I have never felt that way about him. Also, I know that he is a straight man, so I have no intention of turning him into a homosexual. I only flirted with him to annoy him. He then pulled Yun Yanli up and helped him stand. Can you man up? If you still think of yourself as a man, you should learn to let go of anything that is beyond your control. If your parents saw you being so depressed, they would definitely be very disappointed. I am sure they do not want you to be a worthless wretched who only sits around. You make it sound so easy. The pain is obviously too great for anyone to endure. He is not a worthless wretch. He is a real man who has a strong spirit. The young palace master had to jump in and stand up for her master. Kuan Shui was reluctant to argue with a girl, so he remained quiet. Meanwhile, Di Fui finally took a proper look at Yun Yanli. Honestly, he was never fond of the man. Yin Yanli had never stopped plotting against Difui, even when Difui was unconscious. The former prince had even planned to burn him alive. Additionally, the part that annoyed him the most was when Yin Yanli forced Gu Shijio to get married. All these unpleasant encounters were enough reasons for Difui to kill him. However, the man was not entirely devoid of conscience. For that, he was not completely incorrigible. More importantly, Yin Yanli was a friend of Gu Shijio. If he went on with his life in an utterly dispirited manner, Shijio would definitely be sad for him. Therefore, Difui was convinced that he should not bother lowering himself to the same level as the likes of Yin Yanli. He looked at Yin Yanli and quietly cast some spells under his sleeve. Yin Yanli, your parents' souls are not entirely shattered. I shall gather their pieces and put them together as a whole before sending them away for reincarnation, he kindly offered. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.